Chapter 1255. Roar. The loud roar created a sound wave that seemed to have substance. It quickly spread out, stirring up the surrounding sea and causing it to surge like a tsunami. At this moment, the ferocious power of Nine Tails was completely revealed. The island under its feet was like a small boat in the waves, about to capsize at any time. Everything on the island, such as the mountains, forests, and so on, were like pieces of tofu, broken and trampled. In just a moment, the island was in a mess, and there was no place left unscathed. Swoosh, the enraged Nine Tails did not stop. It opened its mouth and condensed a jade-tail beast and shot it out, causing an ear-piercing whistle in the air. Boom, boom, boom. Immediately after, the jade-tail beast exploded on the sea not far away. With a roar, it stirred up a huge wave. Vast amounts of seawater were blasted into the sky, then poured down like a heavy rain, turning the sunny sky dark and gloomy all of a sudden. Swoosh! Suddenly, a figure flashed under Nine-Tail's body and quickly formed a seal. Then he quickly pressed his palm on Nine-Tail's leg and shouted, "For Symbol's seal." Accompanied by this crisp shout, streaks of black sealing techniques immediately overflowed from his palm. In the blink of an eye, they swam around Nine-Tail's body and firmly bound Nine-Tailed. Boom! As the black seal tightened, the huge Nine-Tails suddenly staggered. Its body tilted and it fell heavily to the ground, raising a cloud of smoke and dust. "I'm going to kill all of you." When the smoke and dust gradually dissipated, Nine-Tails, who had been rampaging crazily before, had been suppressed by the black seal that covered its whole body and could not move. It could only open its mouth and curse loudly. Hearing Nine-Tails' curses, the figure who performed the seal made another seal. "For Symbol's seal." In an instant, a black seal appeared on Nine-Tails' mouth, causing Nine-Tails' curses to stop abruptly. "It's done." At this time, the figure who had successfully sealed Nine-Tails clapped his hands. Swoosh! The Vortex Patriarch's dirt soil body landed beside the sealed Nine-Tails and circled around Nine-Tails. Then he said with joy, "Xianglin, well done." Obviously, the person who had just used the four-symbol seal to seal Nine-Tails was none other than Xianglin, who had been following the Vortex Patriarch to learn the Vortex clan's sealing technique. The four-symbol seal was not actually a sealing technique for actual combat. It needed a carrier to carry its sealing technique in order to fully unleash its power. Therefore, the four-symbol seal was usually used to subdue the enemy and then use some solid material, such as a metal storage item, a stone house, or even one's own body to carry the sealing technique to achieve the sealing effect. Xianglin relied solely on the powerful chakra to make the sealing technique not need a carrier to directly seal and bind a strong enemy. This was not something anyone could do. Therefore, even the Vortex Patriarch, who was proficient in the four-symbol seal, praised her from the bottom of his heart. Xianglin looked at Zun, who was not far away, and his eyes were full of pride. "Oomph." With a light snort, Zun said, "Move aside. It's my turn." Xianglin did not waste any time. While unsealing Nine-Tails, he retreated far away from the island with the Vortex Patriarch. Boom! The freed Nine-Tails immediately waved his claws, wanting to attack the retreating Xianglin and the Vortex Patriarch. However, he was a step too late and did not hit them. However, his claws that missed still drew several deep grooves on the island, setting off a large amount of flying stones and smoke. The entire island also trembled. "How dare you tease me like this? You damned bastards! I'll make you pay a terrible price." Nine-Tails quickly got up from the ground, then suddenly opened his mouth and condensed another tail beast jade. He aimed at Xianglin and the Vortex Patriarch, who had retreated far away to the sea. Swoosh! At this moment, Zun flashed in front of Nine-Tails and put her palms together. Sealing technique, Demon Sealing Coffin. In an instant, four light walls that were like barriers appeared out of thin air around Nine-Tails. Then, the four light walls gathered together and sealed the gap above and below, instantly covering Nine-Tails. Boom, boom, boom. almost at the same time that the light wall covered Nine Tails. Nine Tails also released the tail beast jade that was condensing in his mouth, trying to break the hindering light wall. So the tail beast jade hit the light wall and made a roar. However, the violent explosion of the tail beast jade only made the square light shield that covered Nine Tails expand slightly, and then quickly return to its original state. Although the light shield was not affected, the shock caused by the huge explosion shattered the island, causing cracks to appear on the island's ground. After casually glancing at the bottomless crack beside her, Ziyuan looked at Xiang Lin, who had retreated far away. "How is it?" Xiang Lin pouted and said angrily. "Why is Nine Tails so useless?" The Vortex Patriarch said, "Don't be careless. The opponent's sealing technique is very strong." Xiang Lin quickly asked, "Is it stronger than the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique?" The Uzumaki clan Patriarch smiled proudly. "How is that possible? Although it is not as good as the Uzumaki clan's sealing technique, it is still outstanding in the ninja world." Xiang Lin didn't say anything more and directly used the teleportation technique to come to the island. She waved at Ziyuan and said, "It's my turn. I want to see what other tricks you have." With a wave of her hand, Ziyuan removed her sealing technique and retreated far away. As Ziyuan removed the sealing technique, the light shield that covered Nine Tails quickly disappeared, revealing Nine Tails, who was still emitting bursts of smoke. Obviously, Nine Tails, who was suffocated in the light shield and suffered the explosion of his tail beast jade, was not feeling well at the moment. Nine Tails, who got out of the trap again, gritted his teeth. "You deserve to die." Before Nine Tails finished speaking, a golden chain flew out of Xiang Lin's body and then quickly wrapped around Nine Tails, tying him up inside and out, even his mouth. The Uzumaki clan Patriarch, who stopped on the sea in the distance, stroked his beard with satisfaction. Diamond Seal is a combat-type sealing technique developed by the Uzumaki clan. It is effective against tailed beasts, summoning beasts, and even ninjas. It is a powerful sealing technique that can be directly used on the battlefield that is constantly changing. However, this technique was developed based on the immortal body of the Uzumaki clan. It required the bloodline of the Uzumaki clan to practice, unlike the four-symbol seal, which could be practiced by anyone. After instantly imprisoning Nine Tails, Xiang Lin looked at Ziyuan in the distance. "Obviously, I am the Real Yang God." Ziyuan suddenly became angry. "Get out of the way, it's my turn." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you all. Chapter 1256. Xiang Lin was a little surprised. "Do you have other ways to deal with Nine Tails?" "Of course." Ziyuan raised her head. Seeing that Ziyuan was full of confidence, Xiang Lin snorted softly, unwilling to be outdone. Then, she removed the Vajra seal that bound Nine Tails and retreated far away like before. Without the restraint of the Vajra seal, Nine Tails, who was once again free, was instantly furious. In the past 1,000 years, it was not that it had never been sealed. However, the ninjas who had sealed it in the past had chosen to seal it because of its terror and strength. For the sake of the peace of the ninja world, they had no choice but to seal it. However, it was the first time that it had been sealed by someone else in turn, as if it was a competition. As the strongest tailed beast, it naturally felt humiliated when it was treated like this. Therefore, it desperately wanted to kill Ziyuan and Xiang Lin, who had teased it. Whoosh, in an instant, a monstrous and fierce chakra burst out from Nine Tails' body. This time, it did not hold back and almost completely erupted its chakra. The orange-red chakra stirred the surrounding air like a storm, forming a violent cyclone above the island. After a while, the cyclone that was swept up by the tailed chakra quickly formed a tornado. Roar with all four limbs on the ground. Nine Tails was in the eye of the tornado storm. It roared angrily at the sky. The huge tornado sucked in all the gravel and trees on the island, causing the entire island to fall into darkness. The continuous impact also made the island more fragmented. On the distant sea, the Vortex clan leader frowned slightly. Nine Tails seems to have completely gone berserk. A tailed beast in a rage was the most dangerous. This was because in this state, the tailed beast had almost no rationality. It would only rely on its instincts to vent its anger and was completely controlled by its emotions. Therefore, even a powerhouse like the Vortex clan leader was not willing to face such a Nine Tails. Xianglin's face lit up with joy. She lost this time. However, at this moment, a dazzling light suddenly shone on the dark island. The light was so pure and brilliant that it instantly dispelled the gloom that shrouded the island. Then, Xianglin heard Ziyuan shout from afar, sealing technique, ring of purification. In an instant, dazzling golden rings appeared on the island one after another, dispersing the raging tornado and the ferocious tailed beast chakra. Then, from top to bottom, the golden rings wrapped around Nine Tails' neck, chest, and abdomen. Not only did they suppress the raging Nine Tails, but they also dispersed the anger of Nine Tails and calmed it down. After completing all this, Ziyuan secretly heaved a sigh of relief. The Nine Tails that had completely gone berserk just now was indeed a little scary. She, who was inexperienced, was shocked for a while before she reacted and quickly performed the sealing technique. If she had been a little later, the island under her feet would have been completely shattered by the power of Nine Tails. The Vortex clan leader in the distance saw this and suddenly became serious. What a powerful sealing technique! Xianglin also nodded subconsciously, instantly dispelling the storm, subduing the raging Nine Tails, and even calming the emotions of Nine Tails. Even Xianglin had to admit that such a sealing technique was powerful. The Vortex clan leader said in a deep voice, "Xianglin, it seems that she will be a strong opponent for you. Clan leader, what should I do now?" Xianglin was a little panicked at this moment. Because of the Vajra seal, the Vortex clan did not develop too many other sealing techniques for tailed beasts. After all, the Vajra seal was very useful, so there was no need to waste time and effort to develop a sealing technique with repeated functions. However, Xianglin had just used the Vajra seal and even the four-symbol seal. Therefore, even the Vortex clan, which was famous for its sealing techniques, only had the last ghoul seal left to deal with the tailed beasts. However, the ghoul seal was a forbidden technique that could perish together with the enemy. Obviously, it could not be used in this kind of daily competition. Therefore, it was Xianglin's turn to make a move again. For a moment, she was in a dilemma. She thought to herself, I should have let her make a move first. The Vortex clan leader thought for a moment, then shook his head and sighed. I can't think of any good way. There are not many sealing techniques that can suppress the Nine Tails. Apart from the sealing techniques of our Vortex clan, the only ones that I know of are the Bright God's Gate, with Dragon Technique, All Cloth Bag Technique, and Open Temple entering Nether Hand. At this time, Ziyuan looked at Xianglin and said provocatively, It's your turn. The Vortex clan leader said, We have successfully sealed twice, and she has also successfully sealed twice. It can only be considered a draw, not a loss. Hearing this, Ziyuan was a little proud. If you have no other way, then continue to watch my performance. Xianglin would not accept even a draw, let alone admit defeat. Therefore, her body flashed, and she once again came to the messy island. Get out of the way. Ziyuan did not talk nonsense. She withdrew the sealing technique and retreated far away. In fact, there were not many ways for her to seal the Nine Tails, because most of the sealing techniques of the witch in the country of ghosts were defensive boundaries to protect herself. However, she was obviously spoiled, and obviously, she would not show weakness to Xianglin. Even with the help of a magical instrument, or even with a pure defensive boundary, she would fight with Xianglin to the end. As Ziyuan withdrew the sealing technique, the Nine Tails was freed again. Her clear eyes fell into boundless anger again, and she roared, How dare you! Suddenly, the Nine Tails' body froze, and she stopped roaring. Then, who had just retreated, looked puzzled, because the Nine Tails were obviously not bound, but they froze for no reason, as if they were being controlled by something. What kind of sealing technique is this? With this doubt, Ziyuan took a closer look and found that the eyes of the Nine Tails were no longer the beast-like vertical pupils, but had become the Rinnegan eyes with circles of lines like Xianglin's. This, after being shocked, Ziyuan suddenly reacted and shouted at Xianglin, "Xianglin, you're shameless. This is not a sealing technique at all." There was no doubt that Xianglin, who was forced to a dead end, had to use her pupil technique. Just like Sasuke in the last battle of the Valley of the End in the original Space and Time, she directly used the pupil power of the Rinnegan eyes to control the Nine Tails. In the face of Ziyuan's doubt, Xianglin snorted softly, "You're too young. When did I say that only sealing techniques are allowed? This is a battle for the title of Young God. There is no room for carelessness." Xianglin was ready. If Ziyuan had other tricks to seal the Nine Tails, then she would use the earth-shaking heavenly star in the next round. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 12:57. Rumble. Amidst the huge roar, the island was completely shattered. However, countless gravel did not sink into the raging sea. Instead, under the pull of an inexplicable force, it floated up against common sense and converged toward a black spot in the air. Roar. At this time, a soul-shaking roar came from high up in the sky. It turned out that not only countless gravel and trees, but even the huge Nine Tails were also sucked into the sky by the traction force and were buried little by the gathering gravel. Naturally, Nine Tails was unwilling to be captured, so it struggled hard in the air. It kept roaring and roaring, and its sharp claws were constantly scratching at the incoming gravel, smashing them into pieces one by one. However, even if the gravel was smashed into pieces, it still desperately gathered on the body of Nine Tails and gradually buried it. In just a moment, the figure of Nine Tails disappeared completely and was replaced by a huge sphere floating in the air. Phew! Standing on the undulating sea, Xianglin, who had put her palms together, let out a long breath. This was the first time she had tried to use the earth-exploding heavenly star. If she had not been forced into a desperate situation by Ziyuan, she would not have used this technique easily. After all, it was already a huge burden to maintain the Rinnegan. However, after successfully using the earth-exploding heavenly star, the joy on her face could no longer be concealed. Being able to use the earth-exploding heavenly star meant that her body had further integrated with the first-generation cells and had been greatly improved. Her ability to control the Rinnegan had become stronger. At the same time, it also meant that she had the ability to use the natural reincarnation technique to resurrect Hyojin. Because the pupil technique of the Rinnegan could be roughly divided into 3 levels. The most basic pupil technique was the Shinra Tensei and the 10,000 Nature Attraction, which are the 2 basic pupil techniques that controlled the repulsive and attractive forces. As long as the Rinnegan could be withstood, the host would be able to use these 2 techniques smoothly. The only difference was the strength. The next step would be the Earthly Explosion Heavenly Star and the Heavenly Samsara technique. These second-level techniques generally require the host to be more familiar with the Eye of Reincarnation and have a certain degree of control over the Eye of Reincarnation before they could be used. As for the third-level techniques, they were like the Limbo Prison and the Heavenly Hand Force, which could interfere with space and time and represented the characteristics of each pair of eyes of Samsara. In general, this ultimate technique can only be performed by the original owner of the Rinnegan. Nagato, who did not transplant first-generation cells in the original time and space, could not perform the Will Tomb Side Prison of Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan. Currently, Xianglin had advanced from the first level to the second level. From the initial state of barely being able to bear the eyes of reincarnation to the current state of being able to control the eyes of reincarnation. Although she had yet to reach the third level and was unable to excavate the space-time ocular technique unique to her eyes of reincarnation, it was already a huge improvement. After all, she was only 13 or 14 years old. Swish! The patriarch of the Maelstrom Patriarch appeared beside Xianglin in a flash and exclaimed in admiration, "Is this the eye technique of the Rinnegan?" "Yeah." Xiang Lin nodded heavily. Her face was full of pride. Looking at the huge ball hanging over her head, the patriarch of the Maelstrom Patriarch said solemnly, "This kind of oppression is even more terrifying than my clan's ghost seal. The Rinnegan is indeed the legendary immortals I—" At this time, Xiang Lin glanced at Ziyuan in the distance. How is it? Including the time when Ziyuan used the bounded domain to forcibly imprison QB. The competition had already progressed to the 4th round. She believed that no matter how strong Ziyuan, the witch of the country of ghosts, was, she should be exhausted. Ziyuan took out the witch's crown from the small bag and put it on her head. It's my turn. In the distance, in the air, Gara stood on a floating sand pile with his hands on his chest. In the distance, he had been watching the whole Yang spirit battle between Xiang Lin and Ziyuan. Not only him, but also the show he in his body had seen everything. It was different from the endless chatter in the past, which made Gara unable to sleep in the spiritual world. Since Nine Tails was sealed by Xiang Lin and Ziyuan in the 1st round, the Shohi in Gara's body had fallen into an abnormal silence, and this silence had lasted from the 1st round until now. It seems that it's difficult to meet their needs with only one Nine Tails. After a while, Gara said faintly. The Shohi did not respond and remained silent. Gara continued, "They will soon get tired of sealing Nine Tails. I'm afraid it will be your turn next time." Childish. After a long time, the Shohi spat out 2 words timidly. "I love." Luo smiled. The Shohi immediately became anxious. "What's there to smile about? Don't forget, you and I are one. If I end up like the 9th Lama, you won't have a good time either. Let me tell you, it doesn't feel good to be sealed." "Is that so?" Gara said casually. The Shohi nodded seriously. "Of course, these 2 women's sealing techniques are not simple. I even suspect that their sealing techniques can harm our spiritual bodies. Therefore, you must not agree to their unreasonable requests." Gara shook his head. "That's not up to me. I haven't even mastered the magnetic escape yet." The Shohi stuttered for a moment before promising, "All right, I won't interfere with your cultivation of the magnetic escape anymore." Obviously, the reason why Gara's cultivation of the magnetic escape had been stagnant for so long was because the Shohi was secretly playing tricks in his body. This was because the Shohi's chakra tail contained the magnetic escape chakra. As long as the Shohi fully supported Gara, it would not be a problem for Gara to cultivate the magnetic escape. The reason why the Shohi was playing tricks in the dark was because it felt that it was being mistreated. It wanted to break away from Gara in search of freedom. However, after witnessing the Nine Tails suffering, the Shohi suddenly felt that there was nothing wrong with staying in Gara's body. After hearing the Shohi's guarantee, Gara secretly heaved a sigh of relief. He had used words to provoke the Shohi because he could feel the fear in the Shohi's heart after witnessing the Nine Tails suffering. That was why he had given it a try. Unexpectedly, not only did he find out that the Shohi was secretly interfering with his cultivation of the magnetic escape, but he also received the Shohi's guarantee that he would fully support him. This was undoubtedly a pleasant surprise for him. Of course, the reason why he had used words to provoke the Shohi was because the 2 young gods, Xiang Lin and Ziyuan, had given him too much pressure. He had no choice but to think of ways to increase his strength. Otherwise, he would become a burden to his companions. Here's the second update. Please give me recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, I would like to thank all the students who have gifted me today. Thank you all. Chapter 1258. Through the supervision of the giant Tenseigan, the absurd contest between Xiang Lin and Ziyuan was also seen by Hyojin, who was in the air fortress. These 2 little guys, after a chuckle, Hyojin retracted his gaze. Whether it is Xiang Lin or Ziyuan, although they are young and inexperienced in terms of hardware strength, they have indeed reached the peak level of the shinobi world. Nine Tails, the strongest among the tailed beasts, didn't even have room to resist in their hands. At this point in time, even the reincarnations of the Otsutsuki brothers Naruto and Sasuke are probably inferior to them in terms of hardware strength. But this does not mean that the 2 of them can definitely beat Naruto and Sasuke. If it is really a life and death battle, Naruto, and Sasuke, the two children of the prophecy who are quite talented in combat, may not lose to them. After all, there are too many factors that can affect the results of actual combat. This is just like Xiang Lin and Ziyuan can easily seal 9 tails, but 4 generations can only seal 9 tails by sacrificing himself. But if Xiang Lin and Ziyuan were to face 4 generations, then they're likely to be easily killed by 4 generations' Flying Thunder God technique and Shadow Clone technique before they can even figure out where 4 generations is. And an even more extreme example is the fate of Kagaya, the first Kekkei Jinkai in the shinobi world. Therefore, Kuroto connived at the two of them using the Kyuubi to compete with each other. Because rich combat experience and superb combat skills can't be easily obtained overnight, it requires a lot of battles, summary, and thinking to accumulate bit by bit. There is no shortcut for this. It was not something that could be obtained instantly by transplanting something or awakening something. Apart from this, Hyojin also had another purpose. He wanted to test the state of Otsutsuki Samurai, who was on the moon, through Xiang Lin and Ziyuan's nonsense. He wants to confirm whether Otsutsuki Samurai, who took the Byakugan from Hayashi, has successfully fused with the Tenseigan, and whether he is secretly monitoring the shinobi world so that he can make corresponding arrangements for a second ritual. And judging from the observation results, the giant Tenseigan on the moon doesn't seem to have any abnormal movements. Did Otsutsuki Samurai give up monitoring the shinobi world? Or is he still in the fusion period and can't take care of himself? Rubbing his chin, Hyojin began to think. From the analysis of Otsutsuki Samurai's actions in the original time and space, the first choice to fuse with the Tenseigan is obviously not Hayashi's Byakugan, but Hana's Byakugan. Based on this point, it is reasonable that Otsutsuki Samurai in this time and space has some problems in fusing with the Tenseigan. Hyojin shook his head and frowned unconsciously. It's best if the fusion fails, otherwise I really can't deal with that guy. Once Otsutsuki Samurai successfully fuses with the Tenseigan, he will jump to the pseudo 6-path level like Hyojin, and with the help of the giant Tenseigan on the moon, Otsutsuki Samurai's strength will directly approach the true 6-path level. Because in the Tenseigan chakra mode, all aspects of the attributes are actually very close to the real 6-path level. And the reason why it is pseudo 6-path level is because his own realm is not high enough to complete the initial fusion of 7 different attributes of chakra. He can only use the Tenseigan's pupil power to simulate the nature fusion of the 7 attributes of chakra to condense the truth-seeking ball. Because it is a trick, this kind of simulation consumes a lot of Tenseigan chakra. Hyojin's own chakra is actually quite a lot, but every time he enters the Tenseigan chakra mode, he has to calculate the usage of chakra and strive to finish the battle quickly. But this kind of restriction does not exist for Otsutsuki Samurai. The giant Tenseigan on the moon that gathered all the Byakugan of the Otsutsuki clan of Hamura completely makes up for the high consumption of Tenseigan chakra mode. So once Otsutsuki Samurai has the Tenseigan, it is almost equivalent to 6-path level. The reason why Naruto was able to defeat Otsutsuki Samurai in the original space and time is that Otsutsuki Samurai didn't kill Naruto from the very beginning due to his own status. On the other hand, Naruto and Hinata sneaked into the lookout first and destroyed the giant Tenseigan enshrined in the lookout, causing Otsutsuki Samurai to fall from 6-path level to pseudo 6-path level. At that time, Naruto, who experienced the 4th Shinobi War and sealed Kagaya, was also a weak 6-path level, so after a fierce battle, Naruto defeated Otsutsuki Samurai who lacked combat experience. So for Hyojin, the threat of Otsutsuki Samurai is no less than that of the Akatsuki organization. But now he can no longer resonate with the giant Tenseigan on the moon, as if there is some kind of barrier between them. So he has no way of knowing the specific situation of Otsutsuki Samurai now. Collecting his thoughts, Hyojin sat back at his desk. The other half of 9 tails has been successfully obtained, and 8 units have been collected, but there are still 2 units missing. While thinking, Hyojin's eyes gradually moved down and fell on a list in front of him. This list took him a whole week to sort out, and it recorded all the locations in the shinobi world that are suspected to have a large number of chakra sources or chakra items. Some of them came from his memory, and others were selected by him with the help of the intelligence network of the 5 great shinobi villages and many ancient books. Although there were only 2 units of chakra left for the ritual, the unit that Hyojin set up was almost based on the dragon vein, so it would not be easy to make up the gap of these 2 units. After looking at the list carefully, Hyojin picked up a pen and drew a circle on the giant pit. This giant pit was a place name, and Hyojin included it on the list because he vaguely remembered that there was a very strange item there, and the wanted criminal Disonas who was involved in the recent incident of a large number of bodies being stolen in the shinobi world seemed to be related to the giant pit. Let's start with this giant pit first, Disonas. After pondering for a moment, Hyojin curled his lips and said, "How much is this guy's bounty now?" Developing a stronger Type 4 biological armor for Xiang Yu and Ziyuan, as well as transforming the Sky Fortress and completely embedding the Grayer Vein into the fortress would require a large amount of funds, and there was no progress on Arrow's gold mine, no magnetic release, so Hyojin could only collect chakra while collecting funds at the same time. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1259. Walking on a wasteland, Hyojin's expression was extremely solemn. At this time, all he could see was an endless desert. There was not even a trace of green in his sight, and the desolate yellow ground was even covered with cracks. "This is strange," Hyojin whispered softly. Logically speaking, this was still within the territory of the Country of Fire, and it was not too far from the sea. The climate and environment should not be so extremely dry, just like the depths of the desert in the Country of Wind. This was obviously against common sense. This abnormal environment must have something to do with the giant pit in front of me. With a sway of his body, Hyojin quickened his pace. Not long after, he arrived at the destination of this trip, outside a village called Giant Pit. This giant pit lived up to its name. Standing on the outer cliff, it was obvious that the entire giant pit was actually a huge and regular circular depression that went hundreds of meters deep into the ground. The environment inside the giant pit was completely different from the outside world. The entire giant pit was green. Even from afar, one could feel the vigorous vitality inside, and there was even a sparkling lake in it. As expected, after a pause, Hyojin sniffed again and said with emotion, "Even the air is fragrant." After seeing the giant pit with his own eyes, he was sure that there must be something in the giant pit that was absorbing the energy of the nearby earth veins, gathering all the vitality around the giant pit. It was also because of this that the dozens of miles around the giant pit were all barren gobi, as desolate as the desert in the Country of Wind. But the giant pit was full of vitality, green grass, and even the air was moist and fragrant. After coming to this conclusion, Hyojin had some expectations in his heart. This was because the things that could absorb the energy of the earth veins, without exception, were all high-quality chakra sources. There was no need to mention the divine tree of the Otsutsuki clan, which was a super weapon that could drain the energy of the entire planet and destroy the entire ecosystem. Although the dragon vein and the grayer mineral vein were not as domineering as the divine tree, there were also high-quality tailed beast-level chakra sources. Looking at the scene in front of him, no matter what it was in the giant pit, it could affect the surrounding environment to this extent. Just this point alone was not much worse than the dragon vein and the grayer mineral vein. Was the village attacked? Then, Hyojin noticed that the village in the giant pit seemed to have been attacked. A large part of the buildings had been destroyed, and, from the traces, it should have been done recently. After activating the Tenseigan, Hyojin, who was standing on the outer cliff, observed the village in the center of the giant pit from a distance and found a lot of chakra fluctuations. It seems that there are still people fighting fiercely in the ruined village. Inside the giant pit, clang, amidst the crisp sound of metal clashing, 2 figures crossed each other. One of the figures glanced into the distance and laughed mockingly. "Acting, sir, you should have more important things to deal with than hunting me down," Kakashi said coldly. "Medicine Master Do, surrender. You can't escape. There is no doubt that the two people fighting were none other than Naruto's agent, Kakashi, and Orochimaru's assistant, Apothecary Do. Do chuckled and said, "A small character like me is actually being hunted down by the acting sir. It's really scary. However, is there really nothing to do with it?" Kakashi's face sank, and he glanced at a place not far away from the corner of his eyes. Over there, the wanted criminal Desonas was fiddling with a glass organ that was emitting a glowing halo. It seemed that he wanted to start something, and Asma class, who went to stop him, was blocked by a group of Edo Tensei ninjas. Withdrawing his gaze, Kakashi asked, "What the hell do you want to do?" Do shrugged, shook his head, and said, "Unfortunately, I'm afraid I can't answer this question. Although I don't want to admit it, it seems that I was also played by that Desonas." Kakashi's eyes turned cold. Recently, a large number of corpses in the shinobi world have been robbed. Was it Orochimaru who ordered you to do it? Do smiled and said, "We're just doing some experiments." Seeing that Do admitted it, Kakashi suddenly became angry and said, "You even didn't let go of the corpses of the Kage, of the ancestors of the shinobi villages. How can you just say that you're doing experiments? You'd better return those corpses immediately. Otherwise, our might can no longer turn a blind eye to Orochimaru like before." The corpses of the Kage. Do was startled when he heard this. He had indeed robbed a lot of tombs recently, but most of them were unknown tombs, such as the simple tombs near the battlefield site of the Shinobi World War, and some small tombs on the outskirts of the Shinobi villages. However, he did not extend his hands to the 5 great Shinobi villages, nor did he rob the tombs of the ancestors of the Kage of the villages. Could it be that besides us, someone else is stealing corpses, and it's the corpses of the Kage? In an instant, a doubt came to Do's mind. Kakashi then said, "This is our last warning. It's also the last chance for you and Orochimaru to turn back. Don't be stubborn." Do smiled and said, "Agent Sama, I will convey your words to Orochimaru Sama without missing a word." Ding, ding, dong. At this moment, an ethereal melody came from not far away. Kakashi and Do immediately looked in the direction of the sound and found that the melody was coming from the glass-like organ that Desonas was fiddling with, and the organ seemed to have been activated, shining with a brilliant brilliance. "Ha!" Desonas, who was standing next to the organ, laughed loudly at this time. Asma, who was entangled by several Edo Tensei ninjas, shouted, "Bastard, what the hell did you do?" Desonas grinned. "It's really too difficult to make you stupid idiots understand my lofty ideals. But it doesn't matter. You'll soon be able to witness what a true miracle is. Activate Heaven Spear." Looking at Desonas, who was on the verge of going crazy, and listening to the ethereal and strange melody in his ears, Kakashi suddenly had an ominous premonition. Rumble, at this moment, the huge pit trembled as if there was an earthquake. Immediately after, a huge pillar suddenly extended out from the center of the huge pit. The structure of the pillar kept changing and reorganizing. In the blink of an eye, the pillar rose higher and higher, even exceeding the depth of the huge pit, turning into a circular tower that was hundreds of meters tall. The center of the circular tower was empty. If one flew into the air, they would realize that the circular tower was like a huge cannon barrel facing the sky. Heaven Spear, be it Kakashi or Do, they were shocked by the scene in front of them. Before everyone could recover from their shock, a violent red light burst out from the circular tower and soared into the sky, illuminating the entire sky in a crimson red. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who have tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1260. When the crimson pillar of light shot straight into the sky, a large mass of dark clouds immediately piled up in the originally cloudless sky. Boom! In an instant, a deafening clap of thunder suddenly exploded in the rapidly spreading dark clouds, and a large expanse of red light was reflected, illuminating the deep dark clouds into a crimson color. As the dark clouds spread rapidly, The surrounding light immediately dimmed, as if it had turned from noon to dusk. What is this? Looking at the giant circular tower in front of him and the crimson pillar of light that shot into the sky from the giant tower, Kakashi was surprised. As Mai's Naruto agent, he had seen countless big scenes, but the scene in front of him still shocked him. He did not expect such a thing to be hidden in the giant pit. Like Kakashi, Do was also extremely shocked. Because of the close distance, he could easily sense the surging chakra in the giant circular tower, and he had only felt such a scale of chakra from the tailed beasts. This giant tower is a tailed beast-level existence. After confirming this, Do realized that this giant tower called Heaven Spear was Desona's real target. However, because he did not know what exactly this Heaven Spear was and what effect it had, he was a little hesitant. He did not know whether he should take decisive measures to kill Desona's or help Desona's first before slowly investigating. Compared to Kakashi and Do, the 4 people from Asuma's class were a little worse, especially Shikamaru, Ino, and Ding Ci, the 3 inexperienced genin. First, they encountered a ninja with a dirted soil body that they could not kill no matter how hard they tried, and now they saw such a strange phenomenon. It really made the 3 of them tremble in fear. Asuma, who was leading the team, was even more surprised and suspicious. He thought that this mission was just to collect clues and catch wanted criminals who rob corpses. He did not expect to encounter such a thing, so he shouted at Kakashi, "Kakashi, what do we do now?" Kakashi didn't answer. He just opened a Sharingan that was covered by Mai's forehead protector and stared at the Lance of Heaven. After Desona's, who had activated the Sky Spear, laughed wildly for a while, he hastily pushed the glass organ in front of him away and dropped the ancient book in his hand. Then, he ran towards the Sky Spear with a fanatical look and began to climb with his hands and feet. Seeing this, Kakashi no longer hesitated. Although he didn't know what effect the Sky Spear had, stopping Desona's was definitely the right thing to do. So, he immediately shot a sword of fetters at Desona's. Swish, as the wind whistled, the sword of fetters that was inscribed with the Flying Thunder God spell shot towards Desona's, who was climbing to the top of the round tower of the Sky Spear. At this moment, Desona's seemed to be completely immersed in his excitement. He didn't even notice the sword of fetters that was shooting at him. He didn't even make any movement to dodge. However, just as Kakashi's sword of fetters was about to hit Desona's, a poisonous snake that was as fast as lightning soared into the air and grabbed the sword of fetters that was shooting at Desona's and instantly swallowed it. Kakashi furrowed his brows. It was not surprising that the sword of fetters was intercepted, but when he was about to cast the Flying Thunder God spell to flash over and launch a second round of attacks, he was surprised to find that he had lost his perception of the sword of fetters that was swallowed by the poisonous snake. This undoubtedly meant that the body of the poisonous snake that swallowed the sword of fetters had some special sealing ability. Do, who had released the poisonous snake to save Desona's life, said to Kakashi, "Acting sir, I can't let that guy die before I get the improved spell." At this time, under the impact of the Crimson Chakra Light Pillar, the clouds in the sky gathered bigger and bigger. If the clouds had only covered the area of the giant pit before, then it had covered the entire land as far as the eye could see. As the clouds completely covered the sky, the only source of light in the surroundings was the Crimson Chakra Light Pillar that was shot into the sky by the Sky Spear. Therefore, the sky and the earth had turned crimson as if it was dyed with blood. The sound of thunder came one after another, and red lightning flashed continuously in the clouds. All of a sudden, a red bolt of lightning struck down from the clouds and landed in the huge pit. Rumble, amidst the loud noise, the earth shook. Looking in the direction of the sound, everyone found that there was a big hole that was more than 10 meters deep in the place where the lightning fell. The surrounding ground had all collapsed, emitting a pungent burnt smell. Everyone's heart skipped a beat. This exaggerated power was definitely not an ordinary lightning strike in the natural world. Before the crowd could recover from their shock, another demonic red lightning struck down from the clouds and smashed into the cliff outside the giant pit, shattering a large part of the cliff. Boom, boom, boom. The speed at which the red lightning fell was getting faster and more concentrated. At first, it was just one bolt after another. Gradually, there were 2 bolts of lightning falling at the same time. Later on, the red bolts of lightning falling from the clouds rose and fell continuously, as if there was lightning falling at all times. Under the continuous bombardment of the lightning, the surrounding buildings, trees, lakes, and even the ground were smashed into pieces. Everyone's faces that were constantly illuminated by the red light were filled with horror. The doomsday scene in front of them caught them off guard, and they could no longer care about catching Desonas, who was still climbing. In the distance, Hyegen, who was standing on the cliff, seriously evaluated the activated Spear of Heaven and muttered, "Who made such a weapon?" There is no doubt that at this point, anyone could see that the Spear of Heaven was a powerful chakra weapon. By absorbing the natural energy in the earth veins, it transforms it into a kind of crimson radial chakra. After activation, it will shoot this chakra, letting this chakra create a terrifying thundercloud in the air and then bombarding everything in the surroundings indiscriminately with a form of falling thunder. Hyegen, who had activated the Tenseigan, stared at his feet again, and his face sank. In the vision of his Tenseigan, there was still a steady stream of natural energy deep underground, converging in the direction of the Spear of Heaven, which meant that the Spear of Heaven was still absorbing the natural energy in the earth vein. In other words, as long as the natural energy in the earth vein was not exhausted, the Spear of Heaven would continue to create clouds of destruction that could fall red lightning, and as the area covered by the clouds of destruction grew larger and larger, more and more areas would be destroyed. If no one stopped it, this disaster might affect the entire surface. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1261. Of course, no one stopped him. This was a false proposition in itself. In such a huge ninja world, not to mention the 5 great ninja villages and all kinds of strange ninja organizations, even the 3 holy lands, Mount Mayaboku, Ryuchi Cave, and Shikatsu Forest, would not allow the Heaven Spear to destroy the surface. Furthermore, according to Hygen's observation, the base of the Heaven Spear did not seem to have any strong defense. The wanted criminal named Desonas was almost able to climb to the top of the tower with just his hands and feet. Therefore, Hyegen suspected that some powerful ninjutsu might be able to destroy the base of the Heaven Spear. The person who made this weapon must be a lunatic. After a slight sigh, Hyegen's gaze fell on Desonas, who was struggling to climb to the top of the Heaven Spear. Is he that homicidal maniac? Narrowing his eyes, Hyegen had a trace of doubt on his face. The Heaven Spear was obviously a destructive weapon that attacked the surface indiscriminately. Therefore, he did not understand why Desonas, who had spent so much effort to activate the Heaven Spear, insisted on climbing to the top of the tower. What was he trying to do? Hyegen supported his chin with one hand, his eyes full of curiosity. A scumbag like Desonas obviously did not want to use the Heaven Spear to commit suicide. Therefore, he must have another purpose for climbing to the top of the Heaven Spear. At this thought, Hyegen looked down at the ancient book that Desonas had thrown on the ground, as well as the glass organ that was floating in the air and glowing faintly, "My village." Rumble. Hearing the thunder, the 3 generations who were working in the Naruto building frowned and turned to look out of the window. It was still noon, and the sun was shining brightly. However, for some reason, dark clouds suddenly covered the sky, and lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Sandame stood up and walked to the window. He looked at the clouds in the sky and noticed that they were different from normal rain clouds. Instead, there were a vast expanse of clouds that stretched as far as the eye could see, like a curtain covering the earth. Not only that, but the lightning flashing in the clouds was also abnormally crimson, giving off an indescribable strangeness. Swish at this time, an assassin landed in the elder's office and reported, 3 generations, the intelligence team has found out that the cloud is spreading from the direction of the giant pit. Giant pit? The eyes of the 3 generations turned cold. Kakashi and Asuma were investigating this giant pit, and this strange cloud was spreading from there. There was no doubt that something must have happened in the giant pit. Without waiting for the three generations to make arrangements, Jiraiya and Tsunade came to the office together. The three generations quickly said, "You two came just in time. Something happened at the giant pit." Jiraiya asked, "Is it Orochimaru?" The first suspect in this investigation was Orochimaru, so as soon as something happened at the giant pit, Jiraiya rushed to see the three generations. The three generations shook their heads. "We can't be sure yet." Jiraiya didn't even think about it and said, "Then I'll go." Tsunade said, "I'll go too." "Okay, you two will lead the reinforcements this time." After a pause, the three generations reminded them again, "Just in case, you'd better bring the sealing team along." With the eyesight of the three generations, they could naturally see that the situation in front of them was definitely not something that the wanted criminal Desonas could do. Therefore, there must be other secrets involved. If they brought the sealing team along, at least they would not be flustered. Okay. After responding in unison, Jiraiya and Tsunade did not delay and immediately turn around to prepare. After Jiraiya, Tsunade, and the Umbu left, the three generations looked at the doomsday-like scene in front of them and sighed faintly. Why are these things happening more and more frequently recently? Is something big really going to happen? The Great Toad Sage's prophecy that the shinobi world was about to usher in a change was known to the three generations. Because of this, the ominous premonition in his heart became stronger and stronger when he thought about the recent events, such as the sudden appearance of the grayer mineral vein not long ago and the events that were happening right now. In a secret base of the Akatsuki, Zetsu slowly poked his body out of the ground and said to Obsidian, who was lying on the stone bed, "It seems that something interesting happened outside." Obsidian did not say anything, but silently sat up from the stone bed. Zetsu saw this and asked. Without waiting for Zetsu to finish his words, Obsidian started to remove the bandage on his left eye. Zetsu immediately shut his mouth, held his breath, and looked at Obsidian's left eye with rapt attention. Not long after, the bandages wrapped around him were all removed. Shortly after, he slowly opened his left eye, revealing the samsara with circles of runes in his left eye socket. Staring at the mysterious Rinnegan in Obsidian's left eye socket, Zetsu was overjoyed and said, "Have you adapted?" "Yes." Obsidian nodded lightly. In order to adapt to the Rinnegan faster, Kuroto deliberately removed the Manjikyu Sharingan that belonged to him from Kakashi and then transplanted this Rinnegan. Because he only transplanted one Rinnegan, plus he already has the power of Genji from the fusion of Manjikyu Sharingan and Hashirama cells, so he didn't have to spend years to adapt like Nagato, but it only took him a few months to get used to it. Obsidian then ordered, "Go and prepare." Zetsu looked surprised. What, start now? There was no doubt that Obito wanted him to prepare nothing else but to resurrect the 10 Tails. However, he obviously didn't expect Obito to be so eager. He had just gotten used to one Rinnegan, and now he wanted to immediately become a 10 Tails Jinchuriki. Obsidian asked, "Don't you think this is a good time?" Zetsu was startled for a moment, and then suddenly realized, the activation of the Lance of Heaven will undoubtedly attract the attention of all the shinobi world, whether it is the 5 great shinobi villages, Amitsukami, or Otsutsuki samurai on the moon. Therefore, taking advantage of this chaos to resurrect Jubi is the safest and the most confidential. After thinking about this, Zetsu took a deep look at Obsidian. Obsidian is in the base, but he can clearly perceive the situation outside, which is really beyond his expectation. This shows that after adapting to the Rinnegan, Obsidian's perception has been improved qualitatively. But now is obviously not the time to worry about this, so he immediately said, "I'll go and prepare now." Obsidian nodded. "Be quick." Zetsu immediately squirmed and shrank into the ground. After Zetsu left, Obsidian, who was sitting on the stone bed in the dark, whispered softly, "Rin, I will personally end this chaotic old era for you." Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes, monthly votes. In addition, I would like to thank the students who gave me gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1262. Being afraid of external interference at the critical moment is not only Hyojin's concern. Obsidian and Otsutsuki samurai on the moon also have this concern. Therefore, when Otsutsuki samurai merged with the Tenseigan, he desperately isolated the connection between the moon and the shinobi world. When Obsidian noticed the raging of the Spear of Heaven, the first thing he thought of was to take the opportunity to resurrect Jubi. Just as Hyojin was afraid of them, they were actually more afraid of Hyojin. After moving his body a little, Obsidian came to the depths of the base. This is a natural underground cave, and its internal space is very large. Even the huge outer path demon statue can be accommodated. He used the Rinnegan in his left eye to check the seals that covered the cave walls. After confirming that there were no mistakes, the masked man raised his hands and slowly made a hand seal. Then he suddenly pressed his hands on the ground. Spirit summoning. Bang! A plume of white smoke rose and filled the entire cave. When the white smoke gradually dissipated, the huge and terrible outer path demon statue appeared in front of Obsidian. Success! After successfully summoning the outer path demon statue, Obsidian breathed a sigh of relief. Only by controlling the Rinnegan of Madara Uchiha can he summon the outer path demon statue that has signed a contract with it. This is the reason why Obsidian delayed until now to resurrect Jubi. Because if he didn't adapt to the Rinnegan, he wouldn't be able to control the outer path demon statue, let alone resurrect Jubi. At this time, Zetsu came to the cave and looked up at the outer path demon statue in front of him. His eyes flashed. "I'm ready here. We can start at any time." Brush Obsidian jumped to the head of the outer path demon statue and then reached out and pressed on the outer path demon statue and carefully felt it. After a while, he stood up with satisfaction and said, "The outer path demon statue is in good condition. Let's begin." The long-term seal has a very serious impact on the demon image, so after stealing it from the moon, Madara Uchiha has been working to restore the state of demon image. After the death of Uchiha Madara, this task fell to Nagato. This was also the reason why Nagato, a member of the Maelstrom clan, was instantly sucked dry by the heretic demon statue and became as thin as a stick. Fortunately, it was Nagato. If it was anyone else, they would have been sucked dry by the outer Tao demon statue and died on the spot. It wasn't until Nagato transplanted the first-generation cells and obtained the sage body that was close to the sage of the six paths that he could truly control the heretic demon statue and completely restore the weakness of the heretic demon statue. As a tool man selected by Madara, Nagato is impeccable at this point. Rumble, accompanied by Zetsu's gestures, coffins rose from the ground and appeared in the cave. At the same time, Sasori, the members of the Mist Squad, who were controlled by the illusion, as well as the two-tailed human Jinchuriki, four-tailed human Jinchuriki, five-tailed human Jinchuriki, six-tailed human Jinchuriki, and eight-tailed human Jinchuriki, which were made into the six paths of pain by Nagato, also appeared in the cave. These human Jinchuriki, who were made into the six paths of pain, now completely belonged to Obsidian. Swish, swish, swish. Without Obsidian's command, Zetsu, Sasori, and the five members of the Mist Squad jumped up and jumped to the fingers of the outer path demon statue. After looking at each other, Obsidian said in a deep voice, "Let's begin." In an instant, including Obsidian, who was standing on the head of the outer path demon statue, Zetsu, Sasori, Pipa, Juzo, Dry Persimmon, Ghost Mermaid, Lotus Swan, Black Hoe, and Rhea, a total of 8 people, made a gesture at the same time and shouted, "9 seals of the Phantom Dragon." As the 8 people cast the technique at the same time, the outer path demon statue suddenly opened its huge mouth. Then, 9 dragon-shaped chakra phantoms surged out of the mouth of the outer path demon statue and fiercely attacked the previous human Jinchuriki who walked out of the coffin. There is no doubt that this is the sealing technique, 9 seals of the Phantom Dragon, which can completely suppress the tailed beast. Once hit by this technique, no matter how strong the human Jinchuriki is, it can't resist. So in just a short moment, The previous human Jinchuriki who walked out of the coffin was pulled by 9 dragon-shaped chakra phantoms, and then suddenly sucked a tail of chakra. In just a moment, under the continuous tearing and extraction of the 9 dragon-shaped chakra phantoms, the impure earth body of the previous human Jinchuriki began to disintegrate inch by inch and let out a burst of heart-wrenching howl. Obviously, because the previous human Jinchuriki didn't have a real tail in his body. Only some tail chakra was left in his spirit body. So under the extraction of the 9 seals of the Phantom Dragon, the spirit body of the previous human Jinchuriki was completely drained. Even the impure earth body that can continuously recover couldn't save him. And not long after, he directly turned into a pile of flying ash. But this is different from the long absorption in the original space and time. At this time, the state of the Outer Path demon statue had been completely restored by Nagato, who had the 6th-path immortal body. Hence, the speed of the absorption of the tailed beast chakra had increased several times. Although it was still impossible to forcefully drag the tailed beasts into his body one by one like in the 4th Shinobi World War in the original space and time, he didn't have to spend a few days to slowly extract it. After the previous human Jinchuriki was sucked dry, one of the 9 eyes on the face of the Outer Path demon statue slowly opened. However, the eye didn't fully open, and instead, it only opened halfway. It seemed to be squinting, and there was an indescribable strangeness to it. Obsidian also knew that this was the best he could do before catching the real Shuko. Hence, without further ado, he instructed everyone, next. At the same time, the Jinchuriki who had been made into the animal path flashed and directly arrived under the Outer Path demon statue to receive the 9 dragon-shaped phantoms that emerged from the mouth of the Outer Path demon statue. Due to the fact that the Jinchuriki's body was a complete second last, the extraction speed was obviously slower than before, and it took dozens of minutes for it to be completely extracted. As the second eye on the Outer Path demon statue completely opened, the Jinchuriki, who had lost second last, completely lost her breathing, heartbeat, and body temperature. She became a real Animal Path demon statue that was made of a corpse. After controlling the Animal Path demon statue to retreat, Obsidian glanced at Ju. Ju, who understood what he meant, hurriedly instructed the white Zetsu clone that had sucked dry the Jinchuriki of 3 tails human Jinchuriki on the battlefield to come under the Outer Path demon statue. I'm asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Chapter 1263. Compared to the tailed beast chakra extracted by the former Jinchuriki's impure earth form, the tailed beast chakra contained in the white Zetsu's doppelganger that stood in front of the Outer Path demon statue was undoubtedly purer. Because of the critical situation on the Mist Village battlefield, Yagura, as the Mizukage, did not hold back at all and completely released his tailed beast chakra. Therefore, the 3-tailed chakra that was absorbed by the white Zetsu's doppelganger was not only pure, but also very large in quantity. It was almost equivalent to more than half of the 3-tailed chakra. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the 9 dragon-shaped chakra phantoms in the mouth of the Outer Path demon statue swarmed up and tore the doppelganger apart with a whistling sound. The doppelganger didn't hold back either. While howling, it voluntarily offered the 3-tailed chakra stored in its body. After a while, the 3rd eye on the Outer Path demon statue slowly opened. Just like the first eye, the 3rd eye stopped halfway, but compared to the first eye, the 3rd eye opened a little wider. Puff! Suddenly, Obsidian, who was standing on the head of the Outer Path demon statue, spat out a mouthful of blood. Obviously, the incomplete 1st and 3rd tails had a certain impact on the Outer Path demon statue, and Obsidian, who was in a state of contract with the Outer Path demon statue, was also affected. The members of the Akatsuki all looked over, and Zetsu directly asked, "Are you okay?" Obsidian wiped the remaining blood from the corner of his mouth and said coldly, "I'm fine, continue." Without saying anything more, he once again focused on the Phantom Dragon 9 seals. At this time, as the doppelganger of white Zetsu slowly retreated, the four-tailed Jinchuriki, who was made into the Naraka path, flashed and came under the outer path demon statue. Next was the five-tailed Jinchurin, who was made into the Azura Dao, and the six-tailed Yugao, who was made into the human Dao. Since the four-tailed, five-tailed, and six-tailed beasts were all intact, the absorption of the outer Dao demon statue was very smooth. As the four-tailed, five-tailed, and six-tailed beasts were absorbed into the outer Dao demon statue, the fourth, fifth, and sixth eyes of the outer Dao demon statue opened one after another. At this point, the aura of the outer Dao demon statue had become extremely terrifying. From beginning to end, the heretic demon statue was in existence above the tailed beasts. If the nine-tailed beasts were Ten-Tails' soul, then the heretic demon statue was undoubtedly Ten-Tails' body. Therefore, it was not an exaggeration to say that the heretic demon statue had half of Ten-Tails' strength. This was also the reason why in the battle between Nagato and Otsutsuki Samurai, the outer Dao demon statue could easily suppress the ancestral stone statue on the moon, which was supported by the giant Tenseigan. At this time, the outer Dao demon statue, which was filled with tailed beasts, was getting closer and closer to the world-destroying Ten-Tails. This kind of aura is really frightening. The red-eyed Musashi swallowed his saliva. Because he was a pupillary Kekai Genkai ninja, he knew more about the terror of the outer Dao demon statue than the other members of the Mist Squad. In his past life, there was no one that could be compared to it. Even the tailed beasts were so small in front of the outer Dao demon statue. Lotus, who was always bold, smiled and said, "Ghost Shark, compared to this guy, your tailed beast is not even worth mentioning." Ghost Shark didn't refute. He just looked at the outer Dao demon statue with a serious expression. Not to mention the members of the Mist Squad, even Obsidian, who was prepared for it, felt his heart palpitate. He even felt that the outer Dao demon statue under his feet was starting to get rid of the restraint of his Rinnegan. If it's only one Rinnegan, it's still a bit difficult. After saying that in his heart, Obsidian didn't hesitate at all. He continued to absorb the tailed beasts, because there was no way back for him now. Soon, the earth body of the previous seven tails Jinchuriki staggered to the outer Dao demon statue. Due to the revival of the heretic demon statue, with just a pound from the 9 dragon-shaped phantoms, the former seven-tailed human Jinchuriki's impure earth physique was torn to shreds. Before he could even wail, his spiritual body was completely drained and annihilated. Roar! After squeezing out the seven-tails chakra from the previous seven-tails Jinchuriki, the outer Dao demon statue was still not satisfied. It suddenly let out a shocking roar. Clang, clang, clang. Then it struggled with its hands and instantly tore the iron chains that bound its hands and feet. The sudden change surprised all the members of the Akatsuki organization. Ju, Sasori, and the members of the Mist Squad all flashed and escaped from the outer Dao demon statue. Only Obsidian was still on the head of the outer Dao demon statue. Seeing that the heretic demon statue was about to go berserk, Baitu had no choice but to activate the Rinnegan of his left eye with all his strength, forcefully controlling the heretic demon statue with the power of the Rinnegan. After a long time, the agitated outer Dao demon statue gradually calmed down. The seventh eye on its face was half opened, just like the first and third eye. Absolute Obsidian, who was hiding at the side, asked, "Do you want to continue?" Obsidian panted heavily and said, "Yes." Zhu hesitated for a moment and said, "Is it too risky to continue?" Although he wanted to resurrect Ten-Tails as soon as possible, the outer Dao demon statue was becoming more and more unstable because of the lack of tailed beasts. Before, he could barely suppress it, but after the outer Dao demon statue opened its seventh eye, Obsidian, who only had one Rinnegan eye, was obviously unable to keep up. Obsidian shook his head. There's no way to stop. There was no doubt that in this situation, Obsidian couldn't stop even if he wanted to. Either Ten-Tails was resurrected, or the outer Dao demon statue would go berserk. Hearing this, Ju immediately understood that Obsidian could no longer control the outer Dao demon statue. Dragging it on would only increase the risk of it losing control. So he suppressed the anxiety in his heart and jumped back to the outer Dao demon statue. Sasori and the members of the Mist Squad also returned to the outer Dao demon statue and continued to absorb the tailed beasts. However, compared to before, everyone was obviously more nervous now. Soon, Eight Tails pulled out of Chilabai's body that had been made into the hungry ghost realm. Plop! As the eighth eye on the outer Dao demon statue completely opened, the few human pillars that had lost their lives all fell to the ground with a muffled sound. Obviously, after completing the extraction of Eight Tails, Obsidian cut off his control of the 6 paths of pain and used all the power of the Rinnegan Eye to control the outer Dao demon statue. Therefore, the few human pillars that had been made into the 6 paths of pain lost control one after another and turned into real cold corpses. Here's the second update, asking for recommendation votes and monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you. Chapter 1264. After absorbing the 8 tails, the aura of the outer path demon statue changed again, and an indescribably terrifying pressure began to emanate from its body. Except for Obsidian, who had the Rinnegan, the other members of the Akatsuki felt uneasy, as if they were being targeted by a predator above the food chain. At the same time, the shriveled body of the outer path demon statue gradually swelled up. Continue! Obsidian's decisive shout pulled everyone back from their thoughts. At this time, Ju quickly gathered his thoughts and controlled the filthy earth form of the Gold Horn and Silver Horn brothers to come under the outer path demon statue. Although the Gold Horn and Silver Horn brothers weren't Nine Tails human conduits, the Nine Tails chakra in their bodies was the real deal. Rumor had it that they were swallowed by the Nine Tails, and then by eating the flesh and blood of the Nine Tails, they accidentally obtained the Nine Tails chakra. Although this rumor was exaggerated, considering that they had horns similar to the Otsutsuki clan on their heads, not only did they have the bloodline of the Sage of the 6 Paths, but they also showed signs of atavism. It wasn't entirely impossible for them to do this. Soon, the members of the Akatsuki organization controlled the 9 Seals dragon and pounced on the filthy earth form of the Gold Horn and Silver Horn brothers. Under the tearing of the 9 dragon-shaped chakra phantoms, the Nine Tails chakra in the Gold Horn and Silver Horn brothers were instantly extracted and poured into the mouth of the outer path demon statue. At this time, Obsidian let out a soft cry of surprise. He thought that the Gold Horn and Silver Horn brothers would quickly be drained of the tail beast chakra, like the previous 2 human conduits, and then their spiritual bodies would be annihilated and completely dissipate. But he didn't think that this pair of brothers would be able to hold on for quite a while. The tailed beast chakra in their bodies was clearly much more powerful than the previous 2 human pillars. But even so, 8 minutes later, this pair of brothers, who once killed 2nd Dame-sama Lei Ing and 2nd Dame-sama Naruto, stirring up a storm in the shinobi world, were unwillingly squeezed dry by the 9 seals of Mystic Dragon and completely disappeared from the shinobi world. Roar! After sucking the 9 Tails chakra out of Gold Horn and Silver Horn's bodies, the heretic demon statue became restless again. It pushed its hands against the ground and let out a furious roar. Roar! Due to the fact that they were in an underground cave, the heretic devil statue's roar was quickly reflected by the surrounding rock walls, forming a series of deafening echoes in the cave. The Akatsuki members who escaped from the outer path demon statue covered their ears with their hands, their faces filled with pain. Layers upon layers of loud roars seemed to want to pierce through their eardrums, causing them to feel dizzy and scared out of their wits. Obsidian, who was still on the head of the outer path demon statue, was not feeling well either. He quickly activated the Manjikyu Sharingan's pupil technique Kinui and turned himself invisible, barely avoiding the roar, which was comparable to the sound wave ninjutsu. Is it out of control? A trace of despair flashed in Bippa Juzo's eyes. A normal-tailed beast going berserk was enough to destroy the world. Not to mention the fact that they had revived the legendary Ten-Tails as if they were playing with fire. The new leader, Obito, seemed to be unable to suppress this legendary monster at all. Lotus snorted and said, "Tenseigan, if I knew it would be like this, I wouldn't have resurrected Ten-Tails." Ghost Sharingan said, "It's too late to say this now." Damn it. Bai, who had red eyes, couldn't stop trembling. At this time, in his vision, the outer path demon statue that had absorbed Nine-Tails chakra had become a terrifying existence. Raiga, who was the latest to join the Akatsuki, looked at the exit of the cave in a panic, thinking of a way to escape. On the other side, Black Zetsu, who had half of his body on the ground, stared at the outer path demon statue that was about to go berserk. Black Zetsu murmured excitedly, "I finally resurrected Ten-Tails." White Zetsu curled his lips and said, "Hey, now is not the time to be excited. If Obsidian can't control Ten-Tails, then we will have done something stupid." Black Zetsu ignored White Zetsu. His eyes flashed with a strange light. No one in the shinobi world could understand his current mood. After 1,000 years of planning and waiting, he finally saw a glimmer of hope, so he couldn't suppress the excitement in his heart. At this time, the outer path demon statue that was roaring stopped, and then the ninth eye on its face slowly opened. The moment the ninth eye opened, its entire face suddenly twisted and shrunk into a ball. Then its body also shrunk into a ball, like a huge, constantly pulsating cocoon. Rumble, the change of the outer path demon statue, instantly caused a tremor. Even though the surrounding cave walls had been strengthened by Obsidian's sealing technique, under the vibration of the outer path demon statue, it still became shaky. Gravel fell in pieces, and many cracks appeared on the rock walls. "Not good. This cave is going to collapse." Pipa Juzong roared. Miseo said, "We can't stay here, retreat." With Miseo's warning, the 5 members of the Mist team immediately withdrew from the cave. Even if they were strong, elite ninjas, they were not qualified to watch the resurrection of Ten-Tails. With the retreat of the Mist team, only Obsidian, Zetsu, and Sasori, who was controlled by Obsidian's Genjutsu, were left in the cave. Kacha, just as the mountain continued to collapse and the rock walls continued to fall, the huge cocoon shell suddenly cracked with a crisp sound, and then huge tails rushed out of the cocoon shell one after another. Bang, bang, bang. Each of these tails was bigger than a tailed beast, and with just a casual wave, the rock walls of the cave were swept into pieces, and the already shaky cave was completely destroyed in an instant. Without saying a word, Obsidian directly hid in the Shunwei space. Zetsu poked his head slightly, and then retreated into the ground, while Sasori hid in the defensive puppet Pepperfish. The collapse of the cave was simply a drizzle for Ten-Tails, and huge gravel fell on Ten-Tails, but it didn't even attract its attention. It just waved its tail wantonly, flattening the mountain like a piece of tofu. The members of the Fog Squad, who had left the cave one step earlier, weren't completely spared either. In the endless storm and the splashing gravel rain, all of them were wounded, but they managed to escape in an extremely embarrassing manner. Looking back, they suddenly looked at each other. This was because the huge mountain peak had been completely flattened in such a short period of time. What replaced it was a terrifying beast with 10 tails in the smoke and dust that filled the sky. Right at this moment, an eye that flickered with a strange glow suddenly opened up on the enormous figure, and it revealed a crimson-red pupil. It was an enormous eye of samsara that had 9 jade carvings on it. Ghost Mermaid looked terrified. What kind of monster have we resurrected? First update, please recommend votes, monthly votes. Chapter 1265. After seeing the Scarlet 9 Magatama reincarnation, eyes shining with a strange light on Ten-Tail's head, everyone in the Mist team suddenly felt a tremor from the depths of their hearts. Shock, fear, despair, and other emotions gushed out. Hey, what the hell is that? Why is my body trembling? Lotus, who was trying her best to hold on, shouted loudly. Bepa Juzo, with a gloomy face, muttered to himself, Is this the legendary spiritual beast of the goddess of Mao? Yu immediately bit his lip and used the pain to awaken the stiffness in his body. He roared, Now is not the time to be emotional. It's not safe here. We have to retreat a little further. Ten Tails didn't even take the initiative to do anything and completely flattened a huge mountain. Whether it was a deep ravine or a mountain range, there were nothing in his eyes. In the face of such a monster that was completely at the calamity level, in Yu's opinion, they had to at least retreat to the limit of their visual range in order to barely be considered safe. Does the leader know what he's doing? After complaining, the ghost mermaid continued to retreat with the others. Such a monster, let alone resist, it was difficult to even have the courage to face it head-on. Suddenly, in the huge smoke and dust, a twisted vortex appeared out of thin air. Then, Obsidian stepped out of the vortex and landed on Ten Tails' head. These eyes, seeing the Rinnegan Sharingan in Ten Tails' eye sockets, that is, the red Rinnegan covered with 9 Magatama, Obsidian was shocked. After that, the masked man scanned his surroundings. In just a moment, the surrounding terrain had undergone earth-shaking changes. At this moment, not to mention the cave, even a mountain range had been completely flattened. The familiar scenery near the base had all disappeared without a trace. This was still Ten Tails' unconscious behavior. If Ten Tails had deliberately destroyed it, it would have been unimaginable. Is this Ten Tails? The masked man took a deep breath. He was both nervous and excited. At this time, Jetsu poked out half of his body from the ground in the distance and shouted at Obsidian on top of Ten Tails' head, Try to control it. After being pointed out by Ju Ti, Obsidian immediately came back to his senses. Now is not the time to get excited. Ten Tails' resurrection was only the first step of his plan. If Amatsukami discovered Ten Tails' whereabouts at this time, his plan would most likely be in vain. Therefore, he no longer hesitated and immediately formed a seal with both hands. Open. In an instant, a tube-shaped object extended from the Ten Tails and connected to the back of Obsidian's neck. As the tube connected Obsidian and Ten Tails together, the restless Ten Tails gradually calmed down. Seeing this, Ju came to the top of Ten Tails' head in a few leaps and said to Obsidian, the movement just now was too big. With the level of Yama Immortal, he might be able to perceive everything that happened here. So I'm afraid we don't have much time. And Obsidian nodded. After the last battle, the entire shinobi world recognized the concept of six-path level proposed by Hyojin, and Obsidian was also convinced that Yama of Amatsukami was the only six-path level immortal in the current shinobi world. Therefore, he must be very cautious in every step he took when he didn't know what the limit of the six-path level was. Ju quickly asked, Can you immediately become Ten Tails Jinchuriki? Let me try, Obsidian responded, and then, while forming a seal, he fully activated the pupil power of the Rinnegan. But when Obsidian tried to control Ten Tails with his own Rinnegan, the 9 Magatama Rinnegan on Ten Tails' head also shone with a strange light, resisting his control. Puff! Suddenly, Obsidian spat out a mouthful of blood. Ju was taken aback. What's wrong? Obsidian shook his head. No, I consumed too much of my pupil power before, and now I can't completely control Ten Tails. Unlike the single-tailed beast that can be controlled at will with the Manjikyu Sharingan, Ten Tails itself has a 9 Magatama Rinnegan and is not afraid of the control of ordinary pupil techniques. Therefore, if it weren't for the contract relationship, Obsidian, who has half of Madara Uchiha's Rinnegan, can barely be regarded as the master of Ten Tails. He wouldn't have the slightest possibility of controlling Ten Tails at all. Ju asked anxiously, Then what should we do? If we just leave it alone, not to mention Amatsukami, even the 5 great shinobi villages will soon find it. The size of Ten Tails is far larger than that of ordinary tailed beasts. The mountains in front of it are like small mounds of dirt, so even if it stands still, it is easy to be discovered, not to mention that Ten Tails can casually create a tsunami-like movement. Obsidian's expression turned serious, and without any nonsense, he directly launched Kamui. But this time, the Kemui he launched was not only aimed at himself, but also included the entire 10 tails connected to him. The twisting vortex started from his right eye, then quickly expanded and continued to spread, and because of the connection with each other, the twisting vortex naturally extended to 10 tails. The newly resurrected 10 tails seemed to be in a daze and did not react in time. Coupled with the suppression of Obsidian's left Rinnegan, it didn't take long for the twisting vortex to spread all over 10 tails' body. Swish with a loud noise, the huge 10 tails disappeared into thin air in the My Village. Li Fu, who was shopping with Sakura and Yakumo, suddenly froze in place. Sakura asked curiously, "Did you see anything interesting?" Yakumo also looked in the direction of Li Fu's gaze, looking for what attracted Li Fu's gaze. However, Li Fu's eyes slowly lost focus, and she said in horror, "Oh no." In a practice field on the other side of the village, Bang, Naruto, who was competing with CU in physical skills, was kicked away by CU and fell hard to the ground. Sasuke, who was watching from the side, said coldly, "Naruto, you're too lazy to be distracted during a fight." Naruto shook his head and shouted, "Oh no." Sasuke was stunned and asked, "What's wrong?" In the air fortress, Law, who was cultivating magnetic escape, suddenly stopped and muttered to himself, "Really?" The one-tailed crane in his body said seriously, "I can't be wrong. I can feel that guy resurrected." Gaara hurriedly said, "How is that possible?" The Akatsuki didn't gather all the tailed beasts at all. "Except for you, the 3rd, 7th, and 9th tails are all in the hands of His Excellency." The crane replied, "I don't know what happened, but my feeling can't be wrong. It must have resurrected." In the active force room, like the previous Morio, the sealed 9 tails suddenly opened its vertical pupils, looked into the distance in confusion, and said incredulously, "How can this be? It's going to be a new week soon, and the leaderboard will be updated. I'm begging for recommendation votes. It's no trouble at all, please. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you." Chapter 1266. In the huge pit, the crimson chakra pillar of light that shot out from the heaven spear was still soaring into the sky. Within the rapidly expanding cloud, scarlet lightning struck down continuously, bombarding everything on the ground. Even the mountains, lakes, and seas were no exception. "I have to stop this thing." Kakashi's expression was extremely solemn at this time. Although the newly transplanted Sharingan was not the Manjikyu Sharingan of the Obsidian, it was still a 3 Magatama Sharingan that could see through the flow of chakra. Therefore, he knew the terror of the Heaven Spear better than Asma. On the other hand, Asma was helpless. He and his squad were entangled by the densely packed, dirt form ninjas that Desonas had summoned. Although the strength of these dirt form ninjas was not strong, they had a large number of them and could continuously recover. Therefore, he could not spare time to deal with Desonas. Seeing that Desonas was about to climb to the top of the tower, Kakashi said to Yakushi-Do, who had stopped him, "Are you going to destroy the ninja world?" Do's expression was uncertain when he heard this. The current situation was obviously beyond his expectations, making it difficult for him to make a decision. If he allowed Desonas to continue messing around, it was likely to cause a lot of trouble. However, before he obtained the improved technique, he could not let Desonas die in the hands of the My Ninjas. Ha! At this moment, Desona's presumptuous laughter came from the top of the Heaven Spear Tower. In an instant, the eyes of everyone below were attracted by this laughter, and they looked up. "My ninjas are Orochimaru's lackeys. You've all been used by me." After a pause, Desonas opened his arms. "I will become the ruler of this world, and you can only watch." As soon as his voice fell, Desonas, who had his arms wide open, fell into the spear of heaven in front of everyone's surprised eyes, and fell into the pillar of chakra that soared into the sky. Asma exclaimed, "Is he crazy?" Kakashi was also puzzled. He didn't expect that Desona's purpose of climbing the sky spear was to jump into it. No matter how he looked at it, it looked like suicide. "Do," who understood Disona's nature, was the first to react. He knew that with Disona's selfish, arrogant, and crazy personality, it was impossible for him to seek death for no reason. Coupled with Disona's words just now, he immediately understood that this heaven spear should have other effects. Swish, Doe's figure flickered, and he pounced on the glass organ and ancient book that Disona's had left behind. In his opinion, the answer to the question could only be found in these two items. Doe's actions immediately alerted Kakashi and Asuma, so the two of them also rushed towards the glass organ and the ancient book. And so, the three of them fought around the glass organ and the ancient book. In the distance, after discovering that Disona's had taken the initiative to jump into the crimson chakra pillar of light of the heaven spear, Hyojin, who was about to make a move, paused and observed with interest. Soon, he discovered that Disona's was not blasted into pieces by the crimson chakra pillar of light in the heaven spear. On the contrary, the chakra reaction in Disona's body, which was bathed in the crimson chakra pillar of light, was rising rapidly. Hyojin let out a soft cry of surprise. In just a short while, in the vision of his Tenseigan, the chakra's amount in Disona's body had increased by nearly 7 or 8 times, and it was still growing. Can a ninja directly absorb the chakra that this thing sprays out? Seeing this scene, even a knowledgeable person like Hyojin was taken aback. He obviously didn't expect that the heaven spear, which looked like a weapon, could directly strengthen the ninja who was shot by its chakra pillar and instill chakra into the ninja's body. Using this thing as a weapon is really a reckless waste of God's gift. In just an instant, Hyojin realized the value of this heaven spear. In terms of function, it is indeed a weapon that extracts the energy of the ley line and then transforms it into chakra. But in the eyes of Hyojin, it is more appropriate to say that it is not so much a weapon as a converter of ley line energy. To some extent, this heaven spear is a treasure on the same level as the dragon vein and the grayer mineral vein that can also absorb the ley line energy. It's just that the heaven spear does not have the ability to store chakra like the dragon vein and the grayer mineral vein. Once it is activated, it can only transform the ley line energy while shooting out the converted chakra. Perhaps it is because of this flaw that the heaven spear is simply regarded as a weapon by people. Swoosh! Not long after, Disona's, who had been completely strengthened by the heaven spear, swayed and reappeared at the top of the round tower of the heaven spear. Ha ha ha! This world belongs to me now. Kakashi, Asuma, and Dew, who were fighting for the glass organ that could control the heaven spear, retreated and looked at Disona's at the top of the tower in bewilderment. At this time, because Disona's body was filled with chakra, his entire body swelled up and looked very burly. Even Dew, who was familiar with him, almost did not recognize him. Noticing that the few people below were fighting over the glass organ that controlled the sky spear, Disona's leaped with a grim smile, and with the impact of falling from high altitude, he punched the glass organ. Crack, accompanied by a crisp sound, the only glass organ that could control the heaven spear shattered. They looked at Disona's in shock. Are you crazy? Disona's looked up to the sky and laughed. Now, no one can shut down the heaven spear except for me. You guys can either choose to be destroyed by the heaven spear or submit to me. Ridiculous. Asuma's face was livid. Kakashi asked coldly, "Are you the only one who can shut down this heaven spear now?" Disona's, who was surrounded by terrifying chakra, said proudly, "That's right. I'm the only one who can control it now. So make a choice, Mai's proxy Naruto and Orochimaru's lackeys. Do you choose to submit to me or choose to be destroyed by me?" Bam! Before Disona's could finish speaking, a figure descended from the sky and kicked Disona's, who was still clamoring, away at lightning speed. Boom! Disona's, who was kicked away, fell hard to the ground, creating a huge pit. Damn it! The dizzy Disona's crawled out of the pit and shook his head, trying to find the enemy who attacked him. However, before he could see his surroundings clearly, he was grabbed by the neck and lifted up. "How dare you attack me? You're courting death." Halfway through his sentence, Disona's, who was grabbed by the neck and lifted up, was speechless when he saw the mask on the attacker's face. On the 28th, which is tomorrow, there will be a double monthly vote event on Chidian. 1 vote is equal to 2, so I'll be adding more updates tonight. Please vote for me tomorrow, please. Chapter 1267. As an ambitious person in the shinobi world, Disonas naturally knows who is the strongest person in the shinobi world. So after seeing the mask on the attacker's face, he stopped thinking, and his brain went into a state of shutdown. Yama, not far away, Kakashi, Asuma, and Duru were also taken aback, and immediately after, their expressions changed. When Kakashi, Asuma, and the other Konoha ninjas discovered that it was the leader of Amitsukami, Yama, who had arrived, they all breathed a sigh of relief, and their tense nerves also relaxed. In their opinion, no matter how big the trouble is, as long as this immortal appears, then the matter can be properly solved. On the other side, Duru was shocked, and at the same time, there was a hint of doubt in his eyes. Strange, why does Yama have the aura of impure earth form? Obviously, Duru's perception is far superior to ordinary people, and he immediately noticed the abnormality in Hyojin's body. After all, he is one of the few people in the shinobi world who are most familiar with the impure earth form created by impure earth tensei. However, considering the identity of Yama, he didn't act rashly. After a short period of shock, Disonas, who was grabbed by Hyojin, slowly recovered and remembered that he has obtained the power of the Spear of Heaven, so the expression on his face immediately changed from fear to ferocious, and he shouted, "You're courting death." After shouting, Disonas broke out the chakra on his body without any scruples. Boom! With a loud bang, the Crimson Spear of Heaven chakra gushed out of Disonas' body, forming a huge wave of air that swept in all directions. "Ha, did you see that? Even an immortal like you is no match for me now." While laughing wildly, Disonas pinched Hyojin's arm that was twisting his neck with both hands, wanting to directly break Hyojin's arm. Noisy, with a light snort, Hyojin immediately used the power of the giant Tenseigan to drain the chakra in Disonas' body. Swoosh! Suddenly, the burly Disonas deflated like a balloon. As chakra was slapped dry by Hyojin, he instantly shrank and returned to the appearance of the old man. How could this be? Disonas was stunned, his eyes filled with confusion. He painstakingly planned for so long and finally succeeded. He thought that he would be invincible in the shinobi world, but he didn't expect that he couldn't even block a single blow from Yama. It was as if his plan for so long was just a joke. He's not a fake. He's the real King Yinluo of Hell. When Do saw Hyojin instantly sucking up the huge chakra from Disonas, his expression turned cold. After discovering the aura of the impure earth form on Hyojin's body, he once thought that the Yamato of Amitsukami in front of him was someone else who used the impure earth form to disguise themselves. But now, he dispelled this thought and became well-behaved and respectful. On the other side, Kakashi hurriedly said, "Your Excellency Yama, please don't kill him first. He might be the only person who knows how to close the Spear of Heaven now." Hearing Kakashi's words, Disonas seemed to have grasped a life-saving straw and repeatedly echoed, Yes, you can't kill me. If you kill me, the shinobi world will be buried with me." "Is that so?" Hyojin chuckled, then reached into Disonas' body, took out Disonas' memory ball, and casually read it. Seeing that his memory was directly extracted by Suijin, Disonas was so shocked that he was a little speechless. He asked with a trembling voice, "You? What the hell did you do?" Do was also shocked. He had never heard of such a method. It was the same for Kakashi and the others in Asuma's class. This was the first time they had seen such a method that could extract memories at will, and a hint of fear flashed across their faces. After reading for a while, Hyojin's face gradually darkened. 90% of Disonas' memory was about killing. If Orochimaru was cold-blooded and could ignore anyone's life for the sake of research, then this guy was a natural-born murderer. Not only that, this guy clearly didn't have a way to shut down the Sky Spear, but to everyone's surprise, he destroyed the glass organ, the only thing that could control the sky spear. He even claimed that he could control the sky spear to force others to submit to him. Hyojin didn't know how to describe these actions. Even Hyojin felt that using the word lunatic to describe him was an insult to the word lunatic. He can't close the spear of heaven at all, Suijin said coldly as he threw Desonas to the ground fiercely. What? Everyone present, including Do, was taken aback. They all looked at Desonas in disbelief. It seemed that they couldn't understand why Desonas destroyed the glass organ that could control the spear of heaven. Seeing that his trick had been seen through, Desonas simply broke the broken pot and laughed crazily. You want me to die? Ha ha! All of you will be buried with me. Die together. Realizing the seriousness of the matter, Kakashi quickly stepped forward and asked Hyojin, Your Excellency Yama, what should we do now? Hyojin didn't say much and directly made a seal with his hands. Psychic Jutsu. Bang! Suddenly, a burst of white smoke gushed out in front of Hyojin. At this moment, everyone's eyes focused on him, including Desonas. They were all curious about what Yama, the strongest immortal in the shinobi world, did to deal with the crisis in front of them. However, after the white smoke dissipated, what appeared in front of everyone was a member of Amatsukami. He was wearing a black and gold-edged cloak and a mask, just like Yama. However, the mask on the face of this member of Amatsukami was not the mask that Kakashi and others were familiar with, but a mask with a sun pattern on it. A new member of Amatsukami. Kakashi and Asuma looked at each other and saw the deep doubt in each other's eyes. They had seen Suijin, Homusubi, Kazuma, and Xidagarba of Amatsukami, but this was the first time they saw this member wearing a mask with a sun pattern. At this time, Do came forward and greeted politely, Your Excellency Yongshun. Kakashi and Asuma suddenly became nervous. Do obviously knew this new member of Amatsukami, and this new member's code name actually contains the word kamikaze, which is obviously unusual. At this time, Hyojin ordered Yongshun, seal this tower. Desonas laughed when he heard this. It's useless to have one more person. Now, no one can close the spear of heaven. Let's wait for death together, haha. However, before Desonas' laughter ended, Yongshun's hands sent out golden rings one after another, covering the spear of heaven from top to bottom. Then, the red chakra light beam ejected from the spear of heaven disappeared without a trace, and the sun once again penetrated the clouds and shone on the earth. At this time, Yongshun, who was carrying a small bag, tilted his head and glanced at Desonas, saying contemptuously, Idiot! After 12 o'clock, there will be a double monthly vote event. Please support me with your monthly votes. There will be more updates later. Chapter 1268. As soon as the young god made her move, the apocalyptic disaster in everyone's eyes suddenly disappeared. Not only was Desonas dumbfounded, even Do, Kakashi, and the others, who were already mentally prepared, were stunned. The young god clapped her hands and curiously looked at the spear of heaven that she had just sealed. Obviously, the one who had been summoned by Hyojin using the giant Tenseigan as a medium was none other than Zuyun, who had been practicing hard and honing herself these days. You are indeed the young god. Do hurriedly complimented him. This compliment was not false. He was really admiring the young god's attainments in sealing techniques. However, because he had seen the young god seal Ninetales before, he was not too shocked at this moment and was the first to react. Compared to Do, Mai and the others were grinning from ear to ear. When they heard the code name, Young God, they knew that the other party was definitely not ordinary. In Amatsukami, which was full of strong people, he should be a very special one. When the young god made her move, they realized that they had still underestimated the other party. This apocalyptic disaster was solved just like that. This is too childish. Asuma swallowed his saliva, a look of disbelief on his face. He had imagined many scenarios in his mind. There was the scene of Yama using ninjutsu to directly shatter the round tower of the Spear of Heaven. There was also the scene of Yama summoning a meteorite and smashing the entire spear of heaven. However, he didn't expect that Yama would just casually summon another member of Amitsukami. Moreover, this member of Amitsukami, with the codename Young God, only used a ridiculous move to seal the spear of heaven. It's really unexpected that there is such a strong person hidden in Amitsukami. Kakashi secretly sighed. Then, he glanced at Pharmacist Do, who was not far away, and said, Pharmacist Do seems to be very familiar with this young god. Is there any relationship between them? Does Orochimaru also cooperate with Amitsukami? As his thoughts wandered, all sorts of conjectures appeared in Kakashi's mind. What he was most worried about right now wasn't the Sky Spear, but whether Amitsukami and Orochimaru, who was a traitorous ninja of the village, had some sort of cooperation that Amitsukami didn't know about. Since things have calmed down, Your Excellency Yama, Your Excellency Young God, I'll take my leave first. He knew that he had a part in the mess that Desonas had caused. Coupled with Kakashi's gaze, he immediately understood that he had to get away as soon as possible. Otherwise, even if Amitsukami remembered the deal with Nine Tails and did not take the initiative to find trouble with him, Mai would not let him go. As for Zuen, who had just been contacted by Hyojin, her attention was completely focused on the Sky Spear. Hyojin was also thinking about how to take the Sky Spear away, so he didn't pay attention to Daodu. Thanks a lot. Daodu was overjoyed when he saw this. After thanking him, he took a few steps back respectfully before his figure flickered, and he fled in a hurry. Asuma quickly glanced at Kakashi, using his eyes to ask if he should chase after him. Kakashi shook his head silently. He was still unsure about the relationship between Apothecary Daodu and Amitsukami. Therefore, since Amitsukami had tacitly allowed Apothecary Daodu to leave, he didn't want to cause unnecessary conflict. Moreover, the problem of the Sky Spear and the wanted criminal Desonas had not been resolved yet. When Desonas saw that Daodu had escaped by himself, he immediately shouted, Daodu, you bastard! How dare you leave me behind? If I die, you'll never get the improved tactic. Listening to Desonas' yelling, Hyojin swung his hand impatiently and used a soft fist to seal Desonas' vocal tract, so that he could only open his mouth but couldn't make a sound. Then he shifted his gaze to the Sky Spear in front of him again. This Sky Spear was a huge round tower with a diameter of tens of meters and a height of 100 meters. It would not be easy to move the entire thing away. However, after understanding the effects of the Sky Spear, Hyojin was determined to get this thing, because as long as it was used properly, this Sky Spear could be equivalent to a unit of chakra. At this time, Kakashi stepped forward and asked, Your Excellency Yama, how are you going to deal with this Sky Spear? Hyojin withdrew his thoughts and replied calmly, If this weapon is left in the shinobi world, the harm is too great, so let me keep it. All right. Kakashi nodded slightly. Based on the current situation, handing the Sky Spear to Yama was indeed the best choice for Mai. Because in Kakashi's opinion, only Yama, as a sage, would not covet the power of the Sky Spear. If an ordinary person had the Sky Spear, it would be difficult to guarantee that they would not sink into the power of the Sky Spear. Moreover, the glass organ that controlled the Sky Spear was destroyed by Desonas. Other than Amitsukami, no one else might be able to properly handle the Sky Spear. While Kakashi and Hyojin were talking, Shikamaru, who was next to Asuma, stared at the young god for a long time, then whispered to Ino, Don't you feel that this young god has a very familiar feeling? Ino quickly nodded. I thought I was the only one who felt that way. Ding Ci leaned over and asked, What are you talking about? You guys don't talk nonsense. Asuma immediately stopped Shikamaru and Ino. As the son of 3 generations, Asuma knows a lot of information that ordinary jonin do not know. Therefore, he is very clear about the importance of Amitsukami to the 5 great shinobi villages, so he is particularly cautious when facing Amitsukami. At this time, Kakashi asked Hyojin, Your Excellency, this Desonas is a wanted criminal. Can you let us deal with him? Hyojin said lightly, I will deal with this scum. You don't have to worry. When browsing Desonas' memory just now, Kuroda found that in addition to planning the Sky Spear, Disonas also participated in the improvement of the Edo Tensei. The browsing of the memory orb is only rough and fragmented, so in addition to the high bounty on Disonas, this Disonas has other value to Hyojin. Naturally, he will not hand Disonas over to Kakashi. However, he has already made up his mind. Once he squeezes out all the value from Disonas, he will hand Disonas over to the country that issued the bounty. He believes that the families of the victims killed by Disonas will warmly entertain this lunatic who kills for fun, so that Disonas can experience the feeling of being at the mercy of others. Third update. Please ask for monthly votes during the double period. Chapter 1269. At this time, Disonas suddenly shuddered. As a homicidal maniac, his sensitivity to killing intent made him immediately realize that the strongest immortal in the shinobi world in front of him didn't intend to let him go at all. So he made up his mind, made a hand seal, and mobilized the Dirt World ninjas scattered around. All of a sudden, the dozens of Dirt Body ninjas around him stood up shakily. Damn it, these unkillable guys are up again. Asuma's face sank. Shikamaru, Ino, and Ding Ci also became nervous. These Dirt World ninjas were not experts when they were alive, and the offerings prepared by Disonas were also very ordinary, so they weren't very strong. It's just that the undying nature of the Dirt World body allowed them to be resurrected continuously. They were like sticky candy, and once they were attached to the body, there would be no end. Hyojin casually glanced at the large group of Dirt World ninjas that surrounded him, and then casually pressed his palm on Disonas' body. In an instant, a sealing technique appeared on Disonas' body. This is Contract Seal. Kakashi recognized this Uzumaki clan's sealing technique at a glance. With the activation of the contract seal imposed by Hyojin, the psychic contract between Disonas and the Dirt World ninjas around him was instantly lifted. As a result, the undying Dirt World ninjas all scattered like sand in the wind. From the beginning to the end, Hyojin didn't even look at Disonas. His mind was focused on how to move the Spear of Heaven away. Seeing that his last resort was easily resolved by Yama, and it didn't even attract the attention of the other party, Disonas, whose voice channel was sealed, was once again stunned. Only at this moment did he truly realize the gap between himself and the strongest in the shinobi world, and he realized what despair is. After dealing with Disonas' last counterattack, Hyojin ordered Ziyun, maintain the seal. Yes. Ziyun nodded quickly. Hyojin didn't waste any more time. He directly raised his arms and stretched towards the circular tower of the Spear of Heaven. Then he gathered his chakra and activated Rain Will Pull with all his might. Rumble with a loud noise that shook the mountains. The circular tower of the Spear of Heaven in the huge pit was uprooted by Hyojin and lifted into the air. Both Kakashi and Asuma were speechless. Meanwhile, Shikamaru, Ino, and Shinichi were swaying left and right in the midst of the earthquake. They didn't even have the chance to exclaim in admiration. At this moment, Hyojin waved his hand and took Disonas, who was curled up on the ground, into the air. Then, without saying a word, he dragged the huge Spear of Heaven and flew towards the sea in the east. Ziyun smiled and glanced at Shikamaru, Ino, and Chakra, who were staggering. Then, she activated the power of the witch and rose into the air to follow Hyojin. A moment later, looking at the circular pit on the ground left by Hyojin after pulling out the Spear of Heaven, Asuma scratched his head. He moved the whole thing away just like that? Kakashi said helplessly. At least this turmoil has subsided. Just as Asuma and Kakashi looked at each other speechlessly, the reinforcements led by Jiraiya and Tsunade finally arrived. Looking at the mess around, Jiraiya was puzzled and asked, "What happened? Has the matter been resolved?" "Sort of." With a wry smile, Kakashi told the whole story to Jiraiya and Tsunade. After learning that Chakra's weapon, the Spear of Heaven, which caused the Doomsday Scene, had been moved away by Amit Tsukumi, Jiraiya and Tsunade were both worried. To them, Amitsukami was already ridiculously powerful. Now that they had collected treasures like the grayer mineral vein and the spear of heaven, whose value was difficult to accurately measure, their strength had skyrocketed again. Even if they were not enemies, as the consulting elders of Mai, they still felt deeply uneasy. Kakashi said, "In addition to the matter of the spear of heaven, I'm afraid we have to establish a file on a member of New Amitsukami called the Sun God." Asma nodded. "Yes, and we also have to figure out what kind of cooperation Orochimaru has with Amitsukami. And why does he know the Sun God of Amitsukami?" In one of Desona's hideouts. After rummaging for a long time, not only did they find the improved tactics that Desona's had hidden, but they also found a lot of information related to Desona's research on the Spear of Heaven. "I didn't expect to be deceived by that lunatic Desona's. He's been using me all along." Doth immediately packed up all the information and burned down Desona's hideout. After a long time, Do returned to the Sound Ninja village. While handing over the information on the improved tactics and the Spear of Heaven developed by Desona's to Orochimaru, she told Orochimaru everything that had happened. After listening to Do's story, Orochimaru flipped through the information on the Spear of Heaven while asking, "Who got the Spear of Heaven in the end?" Do replied, "On my way back, I went around the giant pit to take a look and found that the Spear of Heaven was no longer there. The entire tower had been moved away, leaving only a deep pit. So, I suspect that the Spear of Heaven has fallen into the hands of Amitsukami." Mai did not have the ability to move the huge Spear of Heaven so quickly, so the disappearance of the Spear of Heaven must have something to do with Amitsukami. This could be concluded with a little analysis. Amitsukami again. Orochimaru narrowed his eyes slightly. Do said, "Fortunately, the immortal of Amitsukami appeared in time. Otherwise, I'm afraid things would be difficult to deal with. I really didn't expect that bastard Desona's to be so crazy." The corner of Orochimaru's mouth twitched. "Do you think that the immortal of Amitsukami appeared to stop the Spear of Heaven from destroying the shinobi world?" Do hesitated for a moment and asked, "Is that wrong?" Orochimaru's eyes flashed. "It's not that simple. Maybe the immortal went for the Spear of Heaven." Do looked at Orochimaru and said, "You mean?" Orochimaru suddenly smiled. "I think I know what Amitsukami is going to do." "What did you think of?" Do looked even more puzzled. "First, the grayer mineral vein, then the nine tails, and now the Spear of Heaven. Don't you think that Amitsukami is consciously collecting chakra?" Do suddenly understood. "Oh, that's true. Because Amitsukami was too mysterious and powerful, Do subconsciously felt that it was reasonable for Amitsukami to take over the grayer mineral vein, the nine tails, and even the Spear of Heaven. Now that Orochimaru reminded him, he realized that these things had one thing in common, and that was that they all had huge chakra. Do then asked, "But why are they collecting chakra?" Orochimaru was very confident. "If I'm not mistaken, there should be someone in Amitsukami who wants to perform another Kekkai Genkai fusion ritual, a more perfect ritual, and this person is most likely Homusubi of Amitsukami, who helped me improve the Kekkai Genkai fusion ritual." Fourth update. Please ask for monthly votes during the double period. Also, thank you to the students who tipped today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1270. In the last 3 days of the 28th, 29th, and 30th, there will be a double monthly vote event. Everyone's vote is equal to 2 votes, so I implore everyone to support it. In terms of the layout, Hyojin's arrangements were almost complete. The remaining chakra collection would be written briefly, and the next part would be the big battle. I will update faster in the next few days and do my best to give everyone an exciting battle. Finally, I ask for a wave of subscriptions, recommendation votes, monthly votes, and tips. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. The 4th chapter of Naruto's World in the Eyes of Reincarnation has been updated. I'm asking for monthly votes during the double time period. Currently typing, please wait a moment. After the content is updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1271. Danzo and Danzo's subordinates who knew about Homusubi's participation in the Kekkai Genkai ceremony either died on the spot or disappeared from the world. Therefore, the only one who knew about Amatsukumi's involvement in the Kekkai Genkai ceremony was Orochimaru. The only one who knew about Amatsukumi's involvement in the Kekkai Genkai ceremony was Orochimaru. Therefore, Amatsukumi's recent actions of taking away the Greyer Mine, the half-nine tails in the body of 4 generations, and the Lance of Heaven made Orochimaru able to guess the purpose of Amatsukumi. Duru's expression turned cold. I didn't expect Amatsukumi's purpose to be hidden so deeply. Hidden? Orochimaru shook his head with a smile. Duru was a little puzzled. Am I wrong? They didn't hide this purpose at all. Otherwise, they would have already acted against me. After a pause, Orochimaru sighed. They just didn't make it public. Duru thought for a moment. That's right, with that sage, no matter what they want to do, no one in the shinobi world can stop them. Orochimaru gently nodded, and a light flashed in his eyes as he muttered, It seems that I still underestimated the chimera technique developed by Hiriko. Since even Amatsukumi attaches so much importance to the chimera technique developed by Hiriko, as well as the Kekkai Genkai ceremony derived from it, Orochimaru has to reevaluate the potential of this technique. After all, this is a technique that can be recognized by Amatsukumi, who has a 6th-path level sage. At this time, Duru seemed to remember something and reported, Orochimaru, Sama, there's one more thing that is very strange. I encountered Naruto, Representative Kakashi, and he accused me of stealing the bodies of the Kage of the 5 great shinobi villages. Oh, someone stole the bodies of the Kage? Orochimaru's interest was piqued. Do replied, Most likely so. The other party's actions seem to be carried out at the same time as ours, so I mistakenly thought that we did it. Orochimaru pursed his lips. Interesting. Daodu asked again, Who do you think stole the bodies of the village shadows? After pondering for a while, Orochimaru said, Akatsuki. Orochimaru already knew about the Akatsuki's encounter with the Akatsuki, so he knew that the Akatsuki also had the Edo Tensei technique. Do didn't seem to be surprised by this answer. Akatsuki is so active in gathering combat power. It seems that it's really, as you said, something big is about to happen in the shinobi world. On the sea, carrying the Lance of Heaven, Hyojin didn't hesitate to use chakra and flew at a high speed. Edo body does have a steady stream of chakra, but this is based on the continuous extraction of the soul, so even in the state of Edo body, Hyojin's usage of chakra is actually very restrained. It's just that Lance of Heaven is too big of a target. Even if he has confirmed that Otsutsuki Samurai on the moon hasn't been paying attention to the shinobi world recently, he still doesn't dare to delay. After a long time, when they were about to arrive at the Sky Fortress, Hyojin threw Disonas to Ziyuin and said, Take him to the 5th practice field. The cautious Hyojin naturally wouldn't let Disonas see the Sky Fortress with his own eyes, and the 4th practice field, which was originally closer to the Sky Fortress, was broken and sunk because of the previous competition between Ziyuin and Xianglin to seal the 9 tails, so he could only temporarily throw Disonas to the 5th practice field, which was a little further away. Ziyuin didn't say anything. After receiving Disonas, she directly sealed Disonas with a sealing technique, and then carried Disonas to the 5th practice field like carrying garbage. After dealing with Disonas, Hyojin accelerated again and soon arrived at the Sky Fortress with the Lance of Heaven. The size of the Lance of Heaven is not much smaller than the Sky Fortress, so it can't be stored in the Sky Fortress at all, so Hyojin temporarily placed the Lance of Heaven on the island under the Sky Fortress. Rumble. Along with a loud rumble, the enormous Sky Spear Tower landed on the small island at a slanted angle. Phew! Suijin also landed on the island and let out a sigh of relief. Then, he circled around the Lance of Heaven while looking up at the Sky Fortress floating in the air from time to time. His slightly furrowed brows gradually relaxed. Along the way, he has been thinking about how to use this Lance of Heaven, and now he has an idea. Through his previous careful observation, although he did not actually use it, he has already understood the effect of the Lance of Heaven. In short, the Lance of Heaven is a huge energy converter, and the chakra it converts can be directly absorbed by ninjas. This has been verified by Desonas himself. Later, by extracting the chakra from Desonas, Hyojin also personally experienced the chakra of the Lance of Heaven and confirmed that this kind of chakra has no obvious harm to the human body. Its attribute is generally in the category of Ein attribute chakra. Its nature is relatively extreme, but it is within the scope of direct use by ninjas. It was also this discovery that gave Hyojin an idea. The main attribute of the Lance of Heaven is Ein attribute, and the main attribute of the grayer mineral load is Yang attribute. If the chakra of these two are combined, it is possible to produce the omniscient force of Yin and Yang. The omniscient force of Yin and Yang can be said to be one of the best chakra. If Hyojin can get the support of a large amount of omniscient force in the second ritual, the success rate of the ritual will inevitably be greatly improved. Out of this idea, Hyojin began to have a bold and even crazy idea in his mind. The Lance of Heaven must be connected to the earth to extract the energy of the ley line and exert its effect, so the Lance of Heaven must be placed on the ground or on an island. In this way, in order to absorb the chakra light beam from the Lance of Heaven, the location of the ritual must be directly above the Lance of Heaven's chakra light beam, which means it must be in the air. Hyojin rubbed his chin. If I let the Lance of Heaven's chakra light beam directly hit the grayer mineral load, the grayer mineral load chakra could not be released orderly in a certain direction like the Lance of Heaven, and the Lance of Heaven's controller had been destroyed. Once it was launched, it could only be stopped by forcibly sealing it. Therefore, if he wanted to fuse the chakra of the two, the best way was undoubtedly to let the Lance of Heaven's chakra light beam hit the grayer mineral load, so that the Yin and Yang fusion could be carried out directly on the grayer mineral load. Yes, the grayer mineral load is my altar. There are only 2 days left of this month. Students who still have monthly tickets, don't forget. Chapter 1272. During the previous ritual, because the altar was not strong enough to withstand the terrifying chakra, after Hyojin opened the 8 inner hidden gates, it directly collapsed during the ritual, causing a lot of trouble for Hyojin during the ritual. After that, Hyojin had been suffering from the lack of strong enough materials to build the altar. This was because after opening the death gate, his body would instantly reach its limit in every sense, and the chakra's amount would skyrocket by dozens of times. Therefore, even a material as hard as steel would be no different from a piece of tofu under that situation. Even if a sealing technique was engraved, it would still be difficult to ensure the stability. However, the grayer mineral vein was different because the grayer mineral vein itself had a powerful chakra. Thinking of this, Hyojin quickly walked to the bottom of the sky fortress and looked up into the sky. If I transform the sky fortress into a hollow ring and then embed the grayer mineral vein in the center of the fortress, then the bottom of the grayer mineral vein can directly receive the chakra pillar of light from the heaven spear, and the exposed top can be directly used as the altar for my ritual. At this point, Hyojin no longer needed the regular areas such as the training ground, energy cannons, living quarters, and so on in the sky fortress. To him, the main purpose of the current sky fortress was to conduct secret experiments, as well as to store all kinds of experimental materials and treasures, such as the giant Tenseigan and the grayer mineral vein. Therefore, as long as a few core areas were preserved, the sky fortress could be transformed into various shapes. As a building floating in the air, the hollow ring shape was also aerodynamic. Whoosh, with a slight thought, Hyojin's figure flashed and disappeared from the island. Soon, he arrived at the hall in the sky fortress where the grayer mineral vein was stored. He carefully examined the huge, or that was emitting a glowing halo. The grayer mineral vein was a flat, irregular, polygonal, or that looked like a rough piece of jade archive. It was about 2 to 3 stories thick, and the area of the jade archive was about half the size of a football field. With such a large area, it was definitely enough to serve as an altar. It was just that the grayer mineral vein itself was very rough. Whether it was the top or the bottom, the surface was not smooth enough. This was not up to standard whether it was used as a ritual altar or as a cross-section to withstand the chakra light pillar of the sky spear. Looks like I still need to polish it before I can put it to use. Hyojin took out a pen and a piece of paper and jotted it down carefully. According to his current train of thought, what he needed to do was to pick a suitable spot to bury the heaven spear in the ground. Then, he would embed the sky fortress in the center of the grayer mineral vein and aim it at the top of the heaven spear's circular tower. After the heaven spear was activated, the chakra pillar of light would shoot directly at the grayer mineral vein. He was standing on top of the grayer mineral lode, forming a vertical line with the heaven spear and the grayer mineral lode under his feet. That way, he would be able to absorb the high-quality omniscient force produced by the yin-yang fusion of the heaven spear and the grayer mineral vein. At the same time, because of the huge omniscient force, the grayer mineral vein would become the strongest altar in the entire shinobi world. Modify the sky fortress. Polish the grayer mineral vein. Choose the location of the ritual. Hyojin's pen did not stop moving as he continued to seriously plan the next step in his notebook. At this time, Gaara rushed into the hall. When he saw Hyojin inside, he quickly went over and said, "My lord, you are here. Why are you panicking? Did something happen?" Hyojin asked casually. "Yes." Gaara nodded heavily and reported, "My lord, the Ten Tails has been resurrected." "What?" Suijin immediately put down the pen in his hand and looked sideways at Gaara. Gaara quickly explained, "I've confirmed it with Showa. It said that there's no mistake. The Ten Tails must have been resurrected, and it happened not long ago." Hyojin spat softly. "Tisk, I didn't expect them to still be able to do it." Although he was surprised by the resurrection of the Ten Tails, he was not too shocked. In the original space and time, Obsidian resurrected the 10 tails when he lacked the 8 and 9 tails. He even fought with the 2 perfect 9 tails as Jinchuriki, Naruto, and Kira, who had the 8 tails Jinchuriki, vividly displayed the power of the 10 tails to crush ordinary tailed beasts. Therefore, the resurrection of the 10 tails doesn't necessarily require the complete 9 tails. As long as the majority of the 9 tails chakra is gathered, it can be attempted. And Hyojin thought that by hiding Gaara and preventing the Akatsuki from capturing Yagura, Fu, and Naruto would be able to ensure that the 10 tails can't be resurrected. But now it seems that he didn't completely stop the Akatsuki. The Akatsuki must have used some kind of method to bypass the 1st, 3rd, 7th, and 9th tails and somehow managed to gather the chakra of the 9-tailed beasts and barely resurrected the Jubi. Gaara said, "My lord, Shoha told me that the 10 tails is a completely different monster from the other tailed beasts. They're not even worth mentioning in front of the 10 tails." "Yeah," Kuroto nodded. He had already known this for a long time. Gaara continued, "Shoha also said that they can sense the 10 tails, and the 10 tails can also sense them. So it is very likely that the Akatsuki used the 10 tails to find this place." Hyojin's face sank. This is not good news. But he didn't panic because of this. Instead, he thought about it in secret. No matter how the Akatsuki resurrected the 10 tails, this 10 tails is still missing 1 tail, 3 tails, 7 tails, and 9 tails. Compared to the 10 tails that Obsidian resurrected in the original space-time that only lacked 8 tails and 9 tails, the 10 tails is much weaker, so the current state of the 10 tails is still questionable. In addition, the situation is different from the original space-time. In this space-time, there is Yama, the invincible sage in the shinobi world. Even if the Akatsuki gave birth to a Jubi's Jinchuriki, and with the help of the Jubi's power, they wouldn't dare to overturn the table without fully mastering the Jubi's power. Although it's not much, I should still have time. After making up his mind, Hyojin directly left the hall and walked towards the sealed room where the 9 tails was. Here's the second update, asking for the monthly votes during the double period. Also, thank you to the students who tipped yesterday. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1273. The QB, who was imprisoned by a series of seals, slowly opened his pair of demonic fox eyes and looked at Suijin, who was walking into the sealed room. Naruto. Soon, his eyes were attracted by the Naruto Hakomi robe that Hyojin was wearing, and a trace of surprise flashed on his face. Because he was sealed in the belly of the Shinigami together with Minato, and as soon as he escaped, he was sealed and taken away by Zeon. So this half of Ninetales is not very clear about the situation in the shinobi world in the past 10 years, nor does he know the existence of Amatsukami, but he still recognized the conspicuous Naruto Hakomi robe that Hyojin was wearing. Then, he noticed the cracks on Hyojin's face and secretly wondered, Edo, Tensei? Hyojin didn't stop and directly came in front of Ninetales. I was going to continue to punish you, but now the situation has changed. You should also feel it. On the way here, Kuroto deliberately changed into the Naruto robe. Humph! Ninetales snorted heavily and turned his head to the side. If it had been the past, if a mere ninja had spoken to it in such a tone, it would have already made a move. At the very least, it would have scolded the ninja. However, after experiencing the mixed doubles of Ziyuan and Xianglin, it already knew how to correct its attitude in front of Kuroto. After all, whether it is the complete body of the Miko or Xianglin who has the Rinnegan, they have already told him through actual combat whose fist is harder here. And these two women, who are comparable to Hashirama in his eyes, are both subordinates of the man in front of him. Not to mention that the man in front of him is wearing the Naruto Hakomi robe. Obviously, he is the 5th generation of Mai, Naruto. In the face of such a strong person, Ninetales feels that it is not too shameful to restrain its temper. It wasn't the first time he lost to Naruto anyway. Hyojin didn't care about Ninetales' arrogance and said coldly, Now, I'll give you 2 choices. One is to be sealed forever and thrown into the space-time vortex so that Tentails can no longer integrate with you. Ninetales' ears twitched. Although it turned its head to the side and acted as if it did not want to pay attention to Hyojin, it was actually listening very seriously. When it heard that Hyojin wanted to throw it into the space-time vortex, it panicked a little even though it was usually fearless. Others might not be able to do it, but the man in front of her might really be able to do it. Noticing Ninetales' actions, the corners of Hyojin's mouth raised slightly, and he continued. The second choice is to return to the new Ninetales' Jinchuriki and integrate with your other half to atone for the crimes you committed in my back then. To be fair, the Ninetales' chaos could not be blamed entirely on Ninetales. However, the Kyuubi is the second culprit who caused the heavy losses of Konoha, and Kuroto can use this as an excuse. Coupled with his identity as a Hokage, it is obviously justifiable to force the Kyuubi. After hearing Hyojin's second choice, Ninetales secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Although there were 2 choices, one was to be exiled forever, and the other was to integrate with the split half and return to a complete state. Therefore, for Ninetales, there was no need to choose at all. Hyojin said, Tentails has been resurrected. You should know what this means, so tell me your choice. After a slight hesitation, Ninetales met Hyojin's sharp eyes. He suddenly felt a chill in his heart and said in a muffled voice, Well, I choose to return to the body of the Jinchuriki. Kuroto nodded and didn't say a word of nonsense, turned around and left. It was not until Hyojin left the sealing room that Ninetales breathed a sigh of relief and said, This guy is even more terrifying than Shueiman. Why does Mai always produce such monsters? Fortunately, Mai still has a Jinchuriki. Otherwise, I'm afraid I will really be thrown into the space-time vortex by him. They have the Rinnegan. It is not impossible to do this kind of thing. The tailed beasts who had dealt with the Sage of Samsara were clear about the power of the Rinnegan. On Hyojin's side, after leaving the sealing room, he thought for a while and immediately summoned a ninja crow. He scribbled an order and then let the ninja crow fly to Mai. Before, he was still a little hesitant. He didn't know whether to keep this half of Ninetale for his own use or to give it to Naruto and let Naruto become a complete Ninetales Jinchuriki. The resurrection of Tentails dispelled his hesitation. The horn of war had been blown. With the resurrection of Tentails, there was not much time left for him. So what he needed to do now was to improve the combat power of his side at all costs. Letting Naruto, who had already mastered the power of Nine Tails, obtain a complete Nine Tails would undoubtedly greatly improve Naruto's strength. At the same time, this did not prevent him from obtaining chakra in the second ritual. Anyway, drawing 2.5 Nine Tails chakra was no different from drawing a whole chakra of Nine Tails. Even the chakra's amount of Nine Tails after the fusion would be more than 2 Nine Tails divided into 2 halves. Hyojin had just changed Naruto's Himoto robe and gave Nine Tails 2 choices. These were actually to suppress Nine Tails and let Naruto have a greater initiative in the communication with Nine Tails. In fact, tailed beasts could not be persuaded by words alone. Even Naruto, who had a pure heart, could not persuade Nine Tails when he was weak. It was not until Naruto's strength was recognized by Nine Tails that the two sides established an equal communication. After that, Nine Tails was gradually moved by Naruto's sincerity and completely let go of the grudge in their hearts. All Hyojin did was to suppress the arrogance of Nine Tails with the identity of Naruto. Then, he became a bad guy and used his strength to oppress Nine Tails so that Nine Tails would be grateful to Naruto and help Naruto move Nine Tails faster. Because Hyojin knew very well that although Nine Tails, this arrogant fox, didn't say it, she was very afraid of Naruto in her heart. This was mainly due to the contribution of Shirdai, who had would release. As 4 generations, Minato also had some contributions. Hyojin borrowed the power of Shirdai and 4 generations, as well as his own powerful forces to make Nine Tails bow their heads and admit defeat. Because he doesn't have time to grind the temper of Nine Tails little by little, so he can only use this method to quickly suppress Nine Tails. Walking, Hyojin soon came to the laboratory and began to prepare the instruments for the first-generation cell transplant surgery. In addition to letting Naruto obtain the complete Nine Tails, he also wants to transplant the first-generation cell transplant surgery for Sasuke. According to Hyojin's original plan, he actually wanted to wait, because Sasuke didn't have the eternal Manjiki Sharingan for a long time, and he hasn't practiced his Yin-Yang release chakra to the limit yet. At this time, the success rate of the transplant surgery will not be too high, but the resurrection of 10 Tails disrupted his arrangements, so he can only take a risk and let Sasuke obtain the power of omniscience first. As for whether Sasuke can awaken the Rinnegan because of this, Hyojin is not worried, because according to the situation in the original time and space, once the situation is in crisis, Sage of the Six Paths will not sit idly by. And what he is doing now is to lay a more solid foundation for Naruto and Sasuke than in the original time and space, so that they can obtain the gift of Sage of the Six Paths to achieve higher achievements than in the original time and space. The first update is here. There's only 1.5 days left in April. Students who still have monthly votes, don't forget to vote. Chapter 1274. In the east of the country of fire. Swish, with the sound of breaking wind, Naruto landed in the forest and looked around. Is this the place that Sensei agreed on? Suddenly, Naruto seemed to have sensed something and turned his head to look in one direction. Soon, there was the sound of unhurried footsteps coming from that direction. Naruto took a closer look and found that the person who came was not someone he knew, but a mysterious person wrapped in a black cloak. Not only that, Naruto, who had mastered the immortal arts, also sensed a lingering cold aura from the person, which made him instinctively feel afraid. "Who are you? Why are you here?" Naruto shouted loudly. In his mind, this was clearly the secret meeting place that Sensei had agreed on with him. He did not even tell his companions like Sasuke, so other than Sensei, there should not be anyone else here so coincidentally. The mysterious person did not answer and still walked slowly towards Naruto. Is it an enemy? Naruto looked serious and raised his arms to make a seal. As the Nine Tails' Jinchuriki in the village, he was very clear about what he meant to the village and the ninja world. So if it was not for Sensei Hyojin's message, he would never leave the village without permission. It was also because of this that he, who was restless, was particularly careful along the way. Swish, at this moment, the mysterious person's figure flashed and disappeared from Naruto's sight at an incredible speed. Oh no! Naruto immediately realized the seriousness of the matter, and his hands that were about to make a seal no longer hesitated and immediately began to make a seal. Bang! But before Naruto made the first seal, the mysterious person flashed in front of him and hit Naruto's chest with a low muffled sound. In an instant, Naruto felt as if he was hit by a huge force that could topple mountains and overturn seas, and his whole body flew out. In a series of loud bangs, he hit several big trees in a row before he could stop his body. It really is an enemy. Suppressing the sharp pain in his chest, Naruto gave up on forming hand seals. With a whoosh, he directly unleashed Nine Tails Chakra and entered the Nine Tails Chakra mode. However, as soon as Naruto entered the Nine Tails Chakra mode, the mysterious man seemed to have predicted it in advance. He rushed to the front of Naruto and raised his hand to press on Naruto's body. You? Naruto was taken aback. Then, he felt the chakra in his body uncontrollably surging towards the other party. In the blink of an eye, the chakra that filled his body dissipated. As the chakra was taken away, Naruto naturally exited the Nine Tails Chakra mode and returned to his normal state while panting. Bang! Then, the mysterious man turned around and kicked Naruto hard again. Damn it! Naruto wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth as he struggled to get up from the ground. Although he had only fought a few times, he had already realized that the other party was very powerful and had a terrifying ability to absorb chakra. At this time, the mysterious man said leisurely, "The strength of Nine Tails' Jinchuriki is only at this level? It seems that your teacher is not very good." Naruto suddenly shouted, "Don't you dare slander my teacher." The mysterious man raised the corner of his mouth and said in a playful tone, "If yelling is useful, then why do we ninjas need to practice ninjutsu? If you want to prove that your teacher is not an idiot, then you have to take practical action." After saying that, the mysterious man slowly walked towards Naruto again. In the face of the powerful, mysterious man, Naruto did not continue to yell. Instead, he quickly formed a seal and used the little chakra left in his body to launch the multiple shadows technique that he was best at. Bang, bang, bang. With a burst of white smoke, dozens of Naruto appeared in the forest in an instant. You can even create so many shadow clones. After a pause, the mysterious man continued. But in this case, the multiple shadows technique is just a waste of chakra. At this time, Naruto's shadow clones all condensed a shining Rasengan in their palms and rushed towards the mysterious man from all directions. The mysterious man was surprised at first, then immediately faced these shadow clones of Naruto. Rumble, the Rasengan hit the tree, and a huge roar on the ground resounded through the whole forest. In just a moment, dozens of shadow clones of Naruto were defeated by the mysterious man one by one. Soon, only Naruto's real body was left in a messy forest. Psychic technique. Just as the mysterious man looked at Naruto's real body, Naruto bit his finger and launched the psychic technique. Bang! Another puff of white smoke rose, and a giant red snake appeared in the forest. Obviously, this big red snake was Exainya, the big snake that Naruto met in the Long Chi Cave, one of the 3 holy lands. Exainya asked in a rough voice, "Naruto, are you in trouble again?" Naruto nodded and said, "Exainya, be careful, the opponent is very strong." After this period of training, Naruto knew that his taijutsu was not weak, but the other party could easily defeat his dozens of shadow clones with taijutsu. This undoubtedly showed that the other party's strength was far beyond his imagination. The one-eyed Exainya glanced at the mysterious man in the forest and said, "Why is that guy's aura so strange?" The mysterious man, on the other hand, chuckled nonchalantly. Spiritual beast, Exainya, who also felt the threat, stopped being careless and shouted, "Naruto, immortal mode." "Yes." Naruto nodded heavily. In an instant, after receiving the natural energy from Exainya, Naruto who was almost exhausted in chakra, immediately recovered his strength and instantly entered immortal mode. At the same time, Exanya fiercely swept his tail across the forest, setting off a cloud of sand and stones. And Naruto, who had entered immortal mode, relied on his extraordinary perception to directly pass through the dust that blocked his vision and quickly launched an attack towards the mysterious man. In the dust, the two sides collided with each other. Naruto in immortal mode had infinite strength, and even the mysterious man was slightly inferior. However, the mysterious man did not fight Naruto head-on. Instead, he faked a move and avoided Naruto's fierce attack, then turned around and pressed his palm on Naruto's back and said in a low voice, "Contract seal." Because of the contract seal, Exanya, who had just been psychically summoned by Naruto, turned into white smoke and instantly disappeared from the battlefield. And just when the mysterious man was about to say something with a smile on his face, the ground under his feet suddenly cracked, and a figure jumped out from the ground, pushing the Rasengan towards him. Second update, the last day of April, asking for monthly votes. Also, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone. Chapter 1275. Boom! Accompanied by an explosive sound, Naruto, who suddenly emerged from the ground, held a Rasengan in his hand and hit the mysterious man's left arm in front of him. Under the huge impact of the Rasengan, the mysterious man pulled himself up and jumped back to the crown of a big tree. Clatter! At this time, the mysterious man's left arm, which was completely shattered by the Rasengan, gradually recovered as the flying debris gathered again, as if it had not been attacked at all. What's going on? Naruto was taken aback when he saw this. The strength has fallen to this point. The mysterious man, standing on the treetop, glanced at his left arm, which had recovered to its original state, and whispered. There was no doubt that this mysterious man was none other than Hyojin, who had the impure earth body. He attacked Naruto because he wanted to see if Naruto had made any progress during this time. Withdrawing his gaze from his left arm, Hyojin's face darkened. The impure earth body was not immortal. If Hyojin had kept the impure earth body in an activated state for a long time, instead of lying in the coffin and sleeping, then the netherworld aura in his soul would continue to infect the sacrifice that made up his impure earth body, causing the sacrifice of flesh and blood to decay quickly. As for Hyojin's sacrifice, due to a long period of operation, it had obviously decayed very badly. Otherwise, it would not have been easily destroyed by Naruto's Rasengan. Glancing around again, Hyojin found that the originally lush grove had become unrecognizable and was in a mess. Hey, Hyojin chuckled. Naruto's performance was undoubtedly beyond his expectations. He thought that this impromptu test would be a very easy crushing. He did not expect that not only would it cause such a big commotion, but he was also tricked by Naruto in the end. Shifting his gaze to the vigilant Naruto, Hyojin raised the corner of his mouth. Even Hyojin had to praise Naruto's tactical choice just now. First, he used the huge spiritual beast to create smoke to block the vision. Then he used the huge chakras amount on the spiritual beast to interfere with the enemy's perception and ocular techniques. Finally, he cooperated with a shadow clone, one on the ground and one underground, and launched a fierce attack together. Just from this tactical arrangement, Hyojin could see that Naruto had considered the possibility of the enemy being an ocular technique Kekkei Genkai Ninja. This was because from the timing of Naruto's attack, as well as Exanya's chakras amount of chakra, it could be seen that they were intentionally covering for the shadow clone that was underground. On Hyojin's side, because after Naruto's chakra was extracted, the chakra reaction in Naruto's body plummeted, and Exanya's huge chakra filled his vision, interfering with his Byakugan's vision. Therefore, he was not able to capture Naruto's shadow clone that was underground. Just who are you? Naruto questioned loudly. Although Exanya's psychic ability was forcefully removed, there was not a hint of fear on his face. Hyojin did not reply, but directly lifted the cloak on his head. Sensei, after seeing the face under the cloak, Naruto was shocked. Kuroto smiled and said, "You have become stronger again." Naruto scratched his head and said with a smile, "So it was Sensei who was testing me. I thought I met those bad guys from Akatsuki." Hyojin's figure flashed and fell down from the tree crown. Naruto hurriedly went up to him, somewhat worried. "Sensei, is your left hand okay?" Hyojin shook his head. "It's okay, don't worry." After noticing the cracks on Hyojin's face, Naruto asked, "What's wrong with your face? And your aura is also very strange. I didn't recognize you." Hyojin did not explain about the impure earth body, just casually said, "Don't worry about me." "Oh." After responding, Naruto hurriedly asked, "Sensei, how was my performance just now?" "Huh. Even you were deceived by my shadow clone." "Well, it's very good." Hyojin is not stingy with his praise. This is not only because he is very satisfied with Naruto's tactical use, but also because he is satisfied with Naruto's tenacity and calmness in adversity. If he used to treat Naruto as a child, then after this battle, he has begun to take Naruto's strength seriously and treat Naruto as a real ninja. After receiving Hyojin's praise, Naruto habitually put his hands on the back of his head, his face full of pride. Hyojin gently knocked Naruto's head and said, "Come with me." "Sensei, where are we going? Are we going to perform a secret mission?" Naruto rubbed his head while following Hyojin. Not long after, Hyojin led Naruto to a cave. As soon as he walked into the cave, the expression on Naruto's face became serious because he felt that there was a familiar yet unfamiliar chakra in the depths of the cave. At the same time, Nine Tails in Naruto's body also slowly opened his eyes, his face full of doubt. Soon, Naruto, who followed Hyojin, came to the depths of the cave and saw the owner of the chakra that he felt familiar, yet unfamiliar, a Nine Tails firmly imprisoned on the rock wall by a sealing technique. Nine Tails? Naruto's eyes widened, and then he subconsciously covered his stomach. Hyojin patted Naruto's shoulder. "Don't panic. This is the other half of Nine Tails." "The other half?" Naruto was stunned for a moment. Then he reacted and asked, "You mean this Nine Tails is the half of Nine Tails sealed in my father's body?" There was no doubt that after meeting Watergate and Jayashinai in the spiritual world last time, Naruto learned many secrets of the night of the Nine Tails Rebellion. He knew that Nine Tails was split into two by his father Watergate at that time, half sealed in his body, and the other half sealed in the stomach of the Grim Reaper with his father. Therefore, his mother Jayashinai had specially told him to find a way to save his father Watergate's soul sealed in the stomach of the Grim Reaper, if he had the chance. Kuroto gently nodded. "Yes, that's the other half." Naruto was overjoyed. "You saved my father's soul from the Grim Reaper?" "Sort of." After a pause, Hyojin continued. "Now, I'm going to seal this half of Nine Tails into your body, so that the Nine Tails in your body will become complete." Just as Hyojin and Naruto were talking, Nine Tails, who was sealed on the wall and could not move, glanced at the yellow-haired Naruto and said, "Is this kid Watergate's son?" First update. Last day asking for monthly votes. Chapter 1276. The Nine Tails sealed on the rock wall didn't dislike Naruto, the Nine Tails' Jinchuriki. On the contrary, because of Hyojin's previous pressure in Shueimon, it naturally felt a sense of closeness to Naruto. It might be hard for others to imagine that the half Nine-Tailed that was sealed by the Watergate with the Corpse Go seal was not only not incompatible with the Watergate in the stomach of the Grim Reaper, but they even got along very well. This was also the reason why the four generations, who were unsealed by Orochimaru in the original time and space, could inexplicably activate the Nine Tails chakra mode. It could be said that in terms of becoming a Jinchuriki, the four generations seemed to be better than Kushina, the Maelstrom tribesman. If the village had chosen to let the four generations become the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, maybe the Nine Tails Rebellion could have been avoided. Sensei, thanks to you, my father's soul is finally free. After learning that his father's soul was unsealed, Naruto respectfully bowed to Hyojin. Hyojin shook his head and said, "Don't thank me." The main reason why he tried so hard to unseal the ghoul seal was for the half-nine tails in Shuemon's body. Not to mention that Shuemin was now in pure earth reincarnation by Orochimaru, so he couldn't be free. Of course, letting Orochimaru temporarily control the impure earth body of the first generation, second generation, and even 4 generations was also his intention. Kuroto and Orochimaru are on the same side when it comes to dealing with the Akatsuki organization, and before the Akatsuki organization is completely dealt with, Kuroto and Orochimaru can temporarily control the impure earth form of Hashirama, Hiruzen, and Yondaime as a precautionary measure. After all, it was not convenient for the village to personally use the impure earth reincarnation of the first generation, second generation, and 4 generations to fight. Since the traitor Orochimaru was willing to take the blame, Hyojin was naturally happy to see it happen. Now that the 10 Tails was resurrected and the war was approaching, Hyojin was even considering whether to send a few better sacrifices to Orochimaru so that the first generation, second generation, and 4 generations under Orochimaru's control could recover more of their strength. For the cautious Hyojin, no matter how big the advantage was, he would not think that it was too big, and no matter whether he prepared a trump card or not, he would not think that it was too much. At this time, the lively Naruto came in front of the 9 Tails that was sealed on the rock wall and said, "Hey, this 9 Tails seems to be a little different from the one in my body." Hyojin also walked over and said, "Well, this half is of the Yin attribute, and the half in your body is of the Yang attribute." Yin attribute? Yang attribute? Naruto had a confused look on his face. Hyojin opened his mouth and was about to explain to Naruto, but after seeing the confused look on Naruto's face, he immediately gave up the idea of explaining and said, "You will slowly understand the difference in the future." "Oh." Naruto nodded and didn't seem to care too much. Hyojin then said, "After the 2 of them are combined into one and become a complete 9 Tails, as a human pillar, your chakra may directly double." Naruto scratched his head and seemed to be thinking about how much chakra he could have after doubling. This couldn't be blamed on him being insensitive, mainly because as a member of the Whirlpool clan and the 9 Tails human pillar, he had so much chakra that he couldn't use it all normally, so he didn't have an accurate concept of his own chakra. At the same time, this also means that the power of the 9 Tails in your body will double. It's hard to say whether your seal can still trap 9 Tails like before, so you have to be extra careful in this regard. Hyojin came to the rock wall and did not forget to give one last warning to Naruto. Naruto's expression became solemn. "Don't worry, teacher. I will be very careful." Hyojin no longer talked nonsense. He raised his arms to form a seal and lifted the seal on the half of 9 Tails on the rock wall. The 9 Tails, who had lifted the seal, didn't make a fuss as Naruto had expected. Instead, they quietly squatted in the cave, but their eyes were fixed on Naruto. Naruto, who had goosebumps for being stared at by 9 Tails, bit the bullet and greeted, "I'm Whirlpool Naruto. Please take care of me in the future." "Humph." The 9 Tails snorted and turned its head to the side. This was the only way it could maintain its dignity in front of Hyojin. Hyojin ignored the 9 Tails and began to form another seal. For symbol seal, open. In an instant, Hyojin, who had completed the seal, pressed his palm on the ground. The ink-colored seal flowed out from his fingers and quickly spread on the ground, forming a huge 8 trigrams pattern. Naruto and the 9 Tails, who were standing in the center of the 8 trigrams, trembled at the same time. Naruto's body trembled because Hyojin had unlocked the seal on his body and released the young 9 Tails from the seal. The 9 Tails trembled because it found that its body was involuntarily thrown into Naruto's body. In the blink of an eye, the 9 Tails found that everything around them had changed. The original cave had turned into a dark underground palace that looked like a sewer. At the end of the tunnel was a huge cage with an open iron door. "Oomph." At this time, a cold snort came from the cage. Knowing that it was its other half lying in the cage, the 9 Tails curled its lips. "Tisk, You're actually locked here like an animal. You're really embarrassing. The young nine-tails in the cage immediately replied, You idiot who was just nailed to the wall. You have no right to say that to me. The nine-tails' face turned red and immediately said angrily, Idiot, do you think I'm afraid of the guy outside? You don't understand what kind of monster I'm facing. The young nine-tails retorted, You're the idiot. The one outside is the real monster. You can't even imagine what I'm facing. Naruto, who had also entered the spiritual world, looked sluggish. He looked left and right. He didn't expect that the two nine-tails would meet in such a scene. Suddenly, the two nine-tails who were mocking each other shut up at the same time. Naruto turned his head and found that Hyojin had also entered his spiritual world. In this strange silence, Hyojin walked slowly to the center of the two nine-tails and said lightly, You don't need me to teach you how to fuse, right? Let's get started. Although they were very disdainful of each other, due to Hyojin's power, the two nine-tails had to walk together obediently. Then, they raised their arms and pressed their palms together. Boom! In an instant, after the two yin and yang nine-tails chakra were connected, a huge tail beast chakra raged in Naruto's spiritual world like a storm. As a human pillar, Naruto was also frightened by this power and took a few steps back. Hyojin's heart skipped a beat, but his expression did not change. He had expected this situation in advance, so when he tested Naruto just now, he deliberately extracted most of the yang nine-tails chakra in Naruto's body. The purpose was to weaken the nine-tails and avoid the nine-tails from being too difficult to deal with after the fusion was completed. The second update will be given, and I'm asking for monthly votes on the last day. Chapter 1277. After the unification of yin and yang, the chakra on the two nine-tails had undergone huge changes. The most obvious manifestation was that the color of the chakra had become much thicker. At the same time, the surging chakra formed a surge that attacked Naruto's spiritual world one after another. It was like a storm raging in it. How could it be? In the storm of chakra, Naruto was forced to take a few steps back. His hands were also in front of his eyes, and he almost couldn't open his eyes. Hyojin's face sank, and he snorted coldly. With Hyojin's cold snort, the surging nine-tails chakra was quickly restrained, and the storm caused by the chakra immediately subsided. Everything returned to its original state. Obviously, everything that happened just now was intentional by the two foxes. Perhaps because they were about to merge into one, their confidence suddenly rose, so they wanted to regain some face. However, they were awakened by Hyojin's cold snort and remembered the consequences of angering Hyojin. So, they immediately admitted defeat and restrained their chakra. After that, the two nine-tails didn't play any more tricks and began to merge honestly. Since they were originally one, the yin nine-tails and the yang nine-tails fused very smoothly. They quickly connected each other's chakra with their palms, and then slowly blended together. Finally, the two merged into one, becoming a nine-tails that was obviously bigger than before, and the chakra was also thicker. After the two merged into one, the memories of the yin nine-tails and the yang nine-tails also began to merge. Therefore, the nine-tails after the fusion had an abnormally strange expression. There is no doubt that the yin nine-tails learned about the existence of Amitsukami from the memories of the yang nine-tails, and they know that the Fudai Naruto is the strongest shinobi in the shinobi world who can condense the truth-seeking ball. The yang nine-tails also experience the experience of being used as a competition by the two yang gods, Ziyuan and Xiangli, as well as the experience of being sealed in turns from the memories of the yin nine-tails. They understood the tragic memories of the yin nine-tails. One was held by Hyojin with the truth-seeking Jade to negotiate, while the other was sealed by the yang god. The same tragic experience allowed the yin and yang personalities to quickly understand each other and tolerate each other. Therefore, after more than 10 years of separation and sealing, Nine-Tails was unexpectedly not affected. Influence on the personality. Hyojin did not relax his vigilance because of the silence of the Nine Tails. After all, he is now facing the complete Nine Tails, and his own state is not good. As the core of the impure earth form, the sacrifice has already decayed, so he must be careful. If he were to fail here because of his arrogance and carelessness, then he could only blame himself. However, Hyojin obviously underestimated the psychological trauma he left on the Nine Tails. He just glanced at them, and the Nine Tails, who suffered a double psychological blow after the fusion, suddenly trembled. Hyojin said calmly, "Don't be afraid. After all, I'm not a devil." The Nine Tails showed an expression of only a fool would believe you, and their eyes were a little evasive. Hyojin then said, 10 Tails has been resurrected, and for 10 Tails, nothing is more important than absorbing you. So even if it's for your own sake, you have to get along well with Naruto. The Nine Tails glanced at Naruto and nodded. It is very clear that the threat of 10 Tails is more serious and urgent than anything else. Although it has lost its freedom, it at least has an independent will. Once it is absorbed by 10 Tails, then as the Nine Tails, it will completely disappear. Boom! With a loud explosion, the huge chakra arrow shot through the rock wall and smashed a large piece of rock. Then, in the splashing gravel and rising smoke, Sasuke, who is controlling the complete Susanoo, shouted, "Such a small trick is meaningless in front of my Sharingan." Before Sasuke's voice fell, a chain with a glittering halo suddenly shot out from the collapsed rock wall around him. Under the cover of the smoke, it entangled Sasuke's Susanoo. Boom! There was another roar, and Susanoo, who was entangled in the chain, fell head first into the canyon. At this time, a figure landed in front of Susanoo, stroking his beard while sizing up Susanoo. Obviously, Naruto is not the only one who left the village alone. Sasuke, who also received Hyojin's order, also left the village without telling his teammates. And the one who greeted Sasuke was none other than the Uzumaki Patriarch, who was Edo Tensei by Hyojin. With Sasuke's current strength, there are not many ninjas who can test him, and the Uzumaki Patriarch, who is experienced and good at various healing techniques, is one of them. The Uzumaki Patriarch is undoubtedly a strong Kage, and he is particularly good at one-on-one combat. During the war in the land of Uzumaki, if it weren't for the huge disparity in numbers between the enemy and the Uzumaki Patriarch, no one would have been the opponent of the Uzumaki Patriarch. After all, as long as the Uzumaki Patriarch is determined, he could have easily killed any strong ninja in the shinobi world at that time, including all the Kages of the 5 great shinobi villages. Although Sasuke, who has the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan, is strong, he still lacks some experience. Coupled with his overconfidence in Susanoo, he was carelessly lured into the canyon by the Uzumaki Patriarch, and eventually fell into the ambush carefully arranged by the Uzumaki Patriarch. Little guy, your Sharingan is not simple. Noticing the eternal Manjikyu Sharingan in Sasuke's eye sockets, the Uzumaki Patriarch sighed. Sasuke, who was bound by the diamond lock, saw the opportunity and immediately aimed his eyes at the Uzumaki Patriarch and launched his Jinjutsu. But after a while, the Jinjutsu didn't work. Sasuke was startled. How can this be? When I dealt with the Uchiha clan, my hadn't been established yet. With a smile, the Uzumaki Patriarch said, "My Uzumaki clan's diamond lock, in addition to restraining the enemy, can also create a barrier that can't be seen by the naked eye. Before the barrier is broken, your pupil power can't affect me." Sasuke's face froze. Damn it. At this time, the Uzumaki Patriarch put away the diamond lock and said, "At your age, it's already very good to have such strength, but your temperament is too arrogant." Sasuke instinctively wanted to argue, but thinking that he had just been defeated by the other party, he snorted. Swish. At this time, Xianglin, who was dressed in the young god of Amatsukami, descended from the sky and landed in front of the two. Sasuke quickly looked over, and after seeing the pattern on Xianglin's mask, he was slightly disappointed and then asked, "Why did the organization summon me this time?" Third update, asking for monthly votes. Chapter 1278. There's only half a day left in April. Those who still have monthly votes, don't forget to vote. After today, your monthly votes will be invalid. In terms of updating, because my brain and hand speed are slow, I've really tried my best. So, I implore everyone to support me with your monthly votes. I'm counting on everyone. The third chapter of Naruto's World in the Eyes of Reincarnation has been updated, asking for monthly votes in the last half of the day. Currently typing. Please wait for a moment. After the content has been updated, please refresh the page to get the latest update. Chapter 1279. Unlike his arrogance in the village, inside Emetsukami, Sasuke doesn't take his identity as a member of the Uchiha clan too seriously, because he knows that there are more than one Uchiha with Manjikyu Sharingan in Emetsukami, and there is also a six-path sage like Yama, so his attitude is much more upright than when he was in the village. Facing Sasuke's question, Xianglin turned around and walked out of the canyon while saying, "Jubi has been resurrected. Jubi has been resurrected?" Sasuke was stunned. Because his teammate is a Jinchuriki, he doesn't have no concept of tailed beasts. He knows that the current 9 tailed beasts in the shinobi world are all split from Jubi, and the purpose of Akatsuki collecting tailed beasts is to resurrect Jubi. It's just that Kuroto is a little puzzled. It's obvious that Akatsuki failed to resurrect Jubi. So how did Jubi resurrect? Xianglin explained, "We don't know what method Akatsuki used to resurrect Jubi, but the resurrection of Jubi is absolutely true, so a war is inevitable." Sasuke quickly followed Xianglin. With leader here, there shouldn't be any problem in dealing with Akatsuki, right? Yeah. After nodding, Xianglin said again, "But Jubi is not a trivial matter, so we also have to make preparations in advance to prevent accidents from happening." Sasuke asked straightforwardly, "What do you need me to do?" Xianglin shook her head. "This time, I didn't summon you to assign you a task, but to arrange a transplant operation for you." Sasuke's expression changed. When he fused with the Manjikyu Sharingan, Hyojin once mentioned to him that the end of the Sharingan is not the Manjikyu Sharingan, but the Rinnegan, which is known as the Sage's Eye. It's just that to evolve the Sharingan to the Rinnegan requires many harsh and almost impossible conditions. After taking a deep breath, Sasuke still couldn't hide his excitement and asked eagerly, "When will the operation be carried out?" Xianglin said, "I don't know. I'll have to wait for the chief to come back to decide. My task is to take you to the operating room and prepare for the operation." After saying that, Xianglin slightly tilted her head and glanced at Sasuke. At such a close distance, with her perception that is almost the best in the shinobi world, she can clearly feel that Sasuke's body has a faintly discernible Jinjutsu power. Logically speaking, before the first-generation cells were transplanted, Sasuke's body should not have the universal nature's power of yin and yang. Not long after, Xianglin led Sasuke, who had been suppressing his excitement, to an operating theater that Hyojin had temporarily prepared, and they waited quietly. The other side, after combining the 2 nine-tails into one and resealing them in Naruto's body, Hyojin gave a few instructions to Naruto, and then rushed toward Sasuke. So even if Hyojin has successfully fused a pair of Rinnegan by chance, he can't make any guarantee to Sasuke, because there are too many uncertainties in it. The eternal Manjikyu Sharingan and the Hashirama cells are just the threshold. Whether there are other conditions behind the threshold, I am afraid that even Madara Uchiha can't tell. Sasuke was not too disappointed. On the contrary, he was full of confidence. "I am different. I will succeed." Hey, Hyojin smiled. Then, he seemed to think of something, waited, and said to Sasuke, "After the last experience of the grayer mind, you should be able to feel the changes in your body, right?" "Yeah." Sasuke nodded in agreement. Hyojin said, "This change comes from a special chakra called the power of omniscient nature, And the key to evolving the Rinnegan is the power of omniscient nature. Sasuke's expression became solemn. His mouth murmured, "The power of omniscient nature. I have a suggestion here." After a pause, Hyojin said, "If you really want to have the Rinnegan, you might as well try to concentrate all the power of omniscient nature into one eye. Fourth, I'm asking for a guaranteed monthly ticket for May. In addition, thank you to the students who gave gifts today. Thank you, everyone." It's just that there are many impurities in the ore veins and the environment is relatively harsh, so it's impossible to mine them manually on a large scale. However, now that you've mastered the magnetic escape and the magnetic escape that targets the gold sands, all the problems have been solved in an instant. Great! Gar was also very happy to hear this. For him, as long as he can be useful to Hyojin, he will feel very satisfied and at ease. In addition, the more gold sand he collects, the stronger he will be as a magnetic escape ninja who can control the gold sand. Hyojin solemnly handed the scroll to Gaara and said, "From now on, your only task is to mine these gold mines and collect as much gold sand as possible." After receiving the scroll, Gaara was startled and asked, "Sama, is it really appropriate for me to leave you to collect gold sand alone at this critical moment?" Hyojin knocked on Gaara's head and said, "It's precisely because this is a critical moment that I'm asking you to do such a big thing. I'll ask the instructor to accompany you. Whether my plan can succeed or not depends on your efficiency." Gaara's expression became serious, and he quickly promised, "Please rest assured, Sama, I will definitely not let you down." Hyojin urged, "Go and prepare. Once you're ready, we'll set off immediately." Gaara and the 3 generations of Kazekage puppets all have a very strong flight ability. So in the case of knowing the specific location of mine, with the chakra's amount of Gaara's Jinchuriki, he should be able to provide gold support to Hyojin's side in time. "Yes," Gaara responded and directly used the body flicker technique to leave. After Gaara left, Hyojin ordered Xianglin, go to the number 5 practice field and use Jinjutsu to interrogate Dissonus. After you get the improved Jinjutsu, send that guy to the black market for the bounty." "Yes," Xianglin responded and immediately disappeared in front of Hyojin. Hyojin, who was in a good mood, turned and walked into the laboratory. The first thing he did when he returned to the laboratory was to go to the row of large nutrition tanks containing the 6 clones. After a period of careful repair, his 6 damaged clones had almost recovered. Among them, the young escape clone had recovered the best, and there were no signs of damage on the surface. The water escape clone, the earth escape clone, and the lightning escape clone had also recovered well. Only the fire escape clone and the wind escape clone had recovered a little slower. The fire escape clone was slightly weaker innately, so it was not surprising that it recovered a little slower. Although the wind escape clone had the best aptitude among all the clones, because it was troubled by the blood inheritance disease, its recovery was also slower, and there were more obvious wounds on its body.